there's not much. There's not much difference. Hello, welcome to Geeks Unleashed. This is episode 74. On this special episode, we're wrapping up our month of horror with a few special guests to help us talk about Netflix's Fear Street trilogy.
And spoiler warning, this is a review show. So if you have not had a chance to watch any of the Fear Street trilogy, you might want to pause this and come back later because we're about to ruin all three films.
Before we jump into anything, it'd be good for go around the virtual room and everyone introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your channel / podcast / YouTube channel. Start with you, Verno. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your channel?
Sure, man. First, thank you guys for inviting me. Looking forward to this little chat. But my name is Verno from the Cerebros podcast. Mostly talk comic books. I do weekly spoiler reviews each week, and then have on guests each week as well. And we break down kind of the best books of the week. So that's pretty much what I do over on the Cerebros.
Awesome, man. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, this is Nick from Comic Culture. So I am on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. We do weekly poll videos of the comic books we picked up. We do reviews on Fridays, some tips and tricks on how to get into collecting comic books on Sundays. And we're just kind of getting into some live stream stuff. And I'm also a pretty frequent regular over on Cerebros. So you can check us out for our top 10 most anticipated books. And we do some review shows practically once a month at least. So YouTube presence, IG presence, and I really appreciate you bringing me on here.
Awesome, man. And Cookie.
Yeah, Cookie from Just a Little Podcast, a weekly pop culture podcast. It kind of goes over everything news related, so anything geek pop culture, comic books, films, TVs, video games, animes, everything all encompassed into one. I do a weekly show. It drops every single Tuesday. I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. I'm trying to get into the swing of that. It's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, but I'm on there, so you can find me on there as well. Just a Little Podcast.
You're taking a little break now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to be taking a hiatus either for a month or for 2 months. I'm going to try to see how it works out. I'm going to try to go and maybe bring on a Patreon. That's my goal. So we'll see what happens.
Well, awesome. Good luck.
Thanks, guys. And I guested on Verno's channel. It's about 6 weeks ago, I think, with Nick as well. So that was pretty awesome hangout, and hopefully sort something like that again. And wanted to return it and bring you guys across. And before we go any further, I think Jasmine's going to take over the mantle here.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so put together a little bit of trivia just to kind of get us in the Halloween-y mood here, since we're covering this trilogy to me that really felt more like an homage to literally every genre of horror film possible. So there are no winners. My apologies, but hey, if you come out on top, you get bragging rights for the rest of the podcast. So that's at least better than nothing, right? Okay, so here we go. Kicking it off, in the first film, there is a mall that plays a really big role in the Fear Street 1994 edition. Can you name another horror movie that involves malls and murder?
Yeah, what Dawn of the Dead? Day of the Dead? Dawn of the Dead?
Dawn of the Dead is a good answer. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
I'll go with Dawn of the Dead as well.
Oh, no, it's sorry.
The remake.
Okay. Dang it. I guess I'll allow it. Okay. Anybody else? Any other?
I'm all out of luck.
No.
I mean, I didn't know about a film, but the whole time watching it, I was like, this feels so much like Stranger Things.
Yes.
So,
yeah, it did. So my entry is The Mist.
And I've seen that movie. Great movie too.
The Mist, for in case you have grocery stores and horror movies too. That whole grocery store sequence in The Mist.
I have seen the film. Yeah. I have seen the film of The Mist, and I actually saw the pilot for the TV series as well. Like
that ending.
Oh, that ending is horrible.
I know. Worst. And anyway, we're not going to go there. That's a whole other episode. Okay, so next question. Why do parents send their kids to summer camp? I have never in my life seen a movie where it involves summer camp and then there's a good ending. So please name another film where a trip to camp goes horribly wrong.
Oh God. Most of the Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. All right. Friday the 13th. Anything else?
I will name a comic book that has that just as a bonus, which is Man-Eaters the Cursed, and that they explain why the parents send the kids away so they can go on vacation and party while the kids are gone. So,
okay.
there's the comic book answer.
That's fair. Anyone
I was
else?
sent away as a kid all the time. So.
Oh no!
did you-
But you made it. You made
I'm
it.
still here. I'm still here.
How many serial killers were at your summer camp?
Yeah.
About 3.5. There was a
I believe
small
that.
one. There was a
Oh,
very
yeah.
small one that was there.
Yeah.
There was a dwarf serial killer.
Yeah.
My entry, not exactly horror, but Adam's Family Values, because Wednesday burned that shit down at the end, and it was awesome. I loved it.
I will
That
say
was a great movie.
Yeah.
I just watched one. It's probably the best one. Is Sleepaway Camp or Sleepaway Camp 2.
I've not heard of that one.
They're pretty much like their old 80s knockoffs. They use the formula of all the Friday the 13th movies, but like the second one is maybe even better than all of the Friday the 13th movies. It's great. It's the one back in the day, if you were going to the Blockbuster and you saw the cover where the girl's walking and she's got a Jason mask and a Freddy glove coming out of her backpack. And that always stood out to me as like, that's awesome. And it's got a little bit of that in it. It's a great old 80s campy slasher film.
I mean, sometimes the campy ones are the best ones, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a horror movie of summer camp, but there was a sci-fi one I watched a couple of years ago on Netflix, Rim of the World. They go to summer camp. And it all goes nuts. Like anyway, I liked it. It's more of a family film, but yeah, not horror at all. But summer camp, summer camp was in there.
Well, I mean, I've done like vacation Bible schools where it's like a week of all of these crazy things, but I survived. It was fine, but that was not like camp. It was like drop you off at the beginning of the day and pick you up like in the dead of night every day. All right, just to get to know everybody. Favorite subgenre of horror?
This isn't my favorite, but it's the one that nobody's heard of that my buddy just invented the name for. And I was like, damn, that's a good one. Is animal horror. Jaws and Cujo and Anaconda and all that. That's just like, I never thought about that. There is a genre.
I
think no one's given it a name, but yeah, I reckon you're right with that.
I like it. I'll
go with sci-fi horror.
I like it.
All Aliens,
right.
Alien, classic.
Yeah, I think sci-fi horror is a really good one. I really like that one. I don't think I have one that I dislike.
That you would classify a favorite.
Yeah, I don't think I do. Yeah, now that I think about it, but I really do like the alien stuff and everything. So sci-fi horror is a pretty good answer. I like it.
Yeah, sci-fi horror is good. I like I can't remember that name of it. There was a trilogy of sci-fi. It's annoying me now. There was like the first film, pretty much like nothing happens until right at the very end. I'll have to look it up and let you know. But it was basically most of the first film, they're hiding out in a hotel, and there's like everyone's getting sucked up into spaceships. There's like a blue light. Does anyone remember what I'm talking about?
No, that doesn't sound familiar.
I'll Google it. I'll Google it in a minute. But no, there is some good sci-fi. But I think, to be honest, for me, I prefer like realistic horror. I don't like. So I mean, it's obviously Fear Street. There is lots of, there is a magical element, but like I prefer the more realistic horror, like where it could happen, which I know probably is something that you don't want to think about. But I prefer like, I mean, I know things like Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's unlikely that people wear masks and run around in the woods. And
I mean, not that unlikely. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on a true story.
But it's not as common. But
yeah,
I prefer things like that rather than the sort of the more supernatural, like where they come resurrected and all that kind of stuff. I'm not as big a fan of stuff like that, but I prefer the sort of the slasher type genre of horror. So.
Yeah, sci-fi is my favorite. Scariest movie to me in the sci-fi genre, as much as I love Aliens, I gotta give it to Event Horizon. Event Horizon gave you nightmares forever. But that is a fantastic horror film. All right. Speaking of films that give you nightmares, what is the scariest movie you have ever seen?
Oh, I just Googled it, by the way. Yeah, the movie is called Skyline. Came out in 2010 with the blue light.
I'm gonna look it up later.
I'll say like my childhood scariest movie of all time, and still if I'm going down to the basement and I'm doing laundry and I'm coming up, I'm checking over my shoulder for Pennywise. Still, that's the one, the original 1990s. It just scared the crap out of me when I was little.
Okay, that's fair.
Actually, no, I can see that. Yeah, clowns.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that kind of sticks out in my mind when I was younger was Evil Dead, the original one.
Okay.
And so because I hate when that girl's just like laughing and giggling in the cellar when the door's locked, and she kind of transforms back into like his girlfriend or whatever, and she's like pleading with him, and then she instantly turns back. It just creeped me out, man. There's a lot of cool little jump scares in that movie, and it kind of, you know, implanted all over my brain when I was young. So I'm gonna say that one stuck with me longer than most.
Okay. All right.
Nightmare on Elm Street as a kid, because that was one I snuck out and kind of watched, and not realizing that I can never go to sleep again. I could never have a dream for the rest of my life, knowing that that's what's lurking in my dreams to this day. So
that's 100% completely fair. I mean, like, yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Mark?
I think as a kid, like, oh man, like the film that really scared me as a kid, I've got to be totally honest, was Jurassic Park. Like that's
Me too. Me too. I'm not gonna lie.
I saw that at the cinema, and honestly, that literally scared the shit out of me. Like, honestly,
I ran out of the theater as a kid watching that scene in the kitchen with the raptors. I literally ran out of the theater. My dad had taken me, so it's just me and my dad. So I locked myself in a bathroom stall. My dad finds an usher or somebody to come into the bathroom to like get me out of the bathroom to go back so that I could leave the theater and go home. But like that movie really freaked me out. It took me forever before I watched Jurassic Park again.
Wow.
But the movie that terrified me the most, The Exorcist. I didn't sleep for 3 days after I saw The Exorcist. It was really bad.
Very understandable.
That's a good one.
All right. Since Fear Street is based on R.L. Stine books, what is the scariest book you've ever read?
I always say I've had this argument a million times. Not argument, but like books never scare you. And it's because like it's the music that scares you. You know, the jump scares and all that. But I never remember feeling like scared from books. And I used to read all the Stephen King books, but I'll stick with it being maybe the scariest one that I've read. But they really don't do it for me in that way, you know.
Good grief. I'm going to have to agree to disagree on that one. Books can terrify me just as much as a movie can. Anybody else?
I can't choose a book, to be honest with you. It just, I don't like the genre at all, horror. So that is something that I've always been afraid of. It's like, why would I want to?
Why do you want to scare yourself?
Why would I pay somebody to scare me? It never clicked with me. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to read a book and I'm going to spend hours reading this book so I can get scared and then not be able to sleep again. It's like, I've already done that with Freddy. I don't need another one in my life.
I learned my lesson the first time. I'm good. You guys are going to laugh at my book.
And I don't think I've read a bunch of other books, but they're mostly like mystery or drama or something like that. I don't think I've really read any horror books before. So that makes me feel really sad that I'd never really experienced that genre.
Oh, no.
In that medium. But I think I'm like Verno. It's like you need that additional sensory input, I think, to really kind of make things super scary. Not to say that you can't be freaked out by a concept, but I feel like, you know, I'm a comic guy. So like, I can understand reading a comic book and being a little bit freaked out by what you see, but like just text on a page, you got me curious now to see if that would actually do something to me. So,
oh, man.
I think I don't read, like, I don't get time to read many text books, like actual like novels, which I know is bad, but like comics are what I mainly consume when I am sitting down to read something. And I would like to say I'd like to have more time to read. And when I do read, it has always something a little bit more sci-fi or fantasy, because that's what I kind of like. However, really weirdly, so I know we're going to talk about R.L. Stine in a bit, but Goosebumps, obviously what he's more known for. But pre-Goosebumps, has anyone heard of point horror? So when I was younger, there's a whole line of books called point horror books. So they were written by various, and I gotta say, I've got to be somewhere between 12 and 14. I think, maybe, I don't know, between 10 and 13, maybe. There was this whole line of point horror books, and they were, like they were all written by different authors. Anyway, R.L. Stine wrote, I think there was 4 of them, called The Babysitter. Now, I only read the first 3 because as the 4th one came out when I was a lot more like 16, 17 or something, and I didn't care about reading.
You were too cool by
then.
Yeah,
I was too cool. I was too cool. But anyway, I didn't get scared by them. Like, I think like Verno and Nick said, like the whole, it's like the music and the tension, but they definitely like creeped me out because I was like 10, 12, and like it was like, this babysitter, like, there's a murderer or whatever. And but yeah, so I would say those books were the only books I remember reading. They've always, even now, like I'm 40 years old, even now I sometimes think about those babysitter books and how creepy they were. Like, so that's probably about the only thing I can really say. Like, I'm not really, I would never choose to read a horror book. Like, and I barely choose to read watch horror movies. So like, I think like Cookie said, to actually choose to invest, I don't know how long it takes to read a book, like obviously the size of it, but 5 to 10 hours reading a book, and like I know it's gonna, by the end of it, I'm not going to sleep. No thanks. Like I'd rather watch an hour and a half movie and it be done with. Like, so,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now don't laugh, but the scariest book that I've read, Jaws.
Okay.
I didn't know it was a book.
Yes, Peter
Yeah, they made a
Benchley.
book out of that?
No, yeah. Peter Benchley watched the movie and was like, I got some expansion ideas I want to play with. No, Jaws really freaked me out. The book is a lot different than the film. Spoiler alert, everybody dies in the book. So it's but I think like that element of it, it's like you never know what's going to happen in the book, whereas in the movie you kind of have, you're like, oh, some people are definitely going to make it. But I didn't know at the time that you could write a book about a shark, and then I would read this book on the 11th floor of my dorm in college and be scared to go to the communal showers because I was reading a book about a shark, even though I was 11 floors up. Like, that book really freaked me out. It's very well written. All right. Favorite horror film based on a true story?
Was it based on a true story?
yeah, definitely. Well, I only know this recently, but Scream was based off a true story.
It was. Damn, you took my answer.
It's the only one I have.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right.
Maybe Hills Have Eyes. I don't know if it's based on it, but the people are very much true as far as being like having relations with your own family and things of that nature, and being challenged and mentally challenged, and your whole entire, like, everything about that was freaky. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie.
Nope. Don't watch that kind of movies.
Oh,
like you said, like that, they're scary.
It's creepy, and you're literally locked, like you're in the desert and you're stranded in the desert, and these people live in these caves, and they're all inbreds, so they're completely out to get you. They're carnivores. There's no help. There's no cell
That sounds
phone.
like Judge Dredd. Really does.
It's crazy. It's scary.
I think I watched the remake of that recently. I think they made a remake and then they made a sequel, and I really liked those. I'm looking at a list right here, and it says like the list of horror movies based on true stories is like, I don't know if I trust this list. It's got The Exorcist, which I have heard that.
Yes,
that's
based on a true story.
Then I would definitely go with The Exorcist. But then
it was a boy. That's the biggest difference. It was a boy.
Oh, okay.
I think he was German.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's got Child's Play on the list. It's got Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't think that happened.
Wait, so Child's Play wasn't based on a real story? Is that what we're saying? The whole thing that was just bullshit that somebody thought. Okay, Exorcist. Then, if that's true, that's a killer, haunting movie, man. That's awesome.
Amityville Horror. Since Mark took Scream, but I'm gonna go both the original and the remake, both of them. I don't know why I watched the remake. I thought maybe like, oh, Ryan Reynolds in it, I can focus on how hot Ryan Reynolds is. That didn't work at all. That movie was still terrifying.
It worked for me.
Okay, last question. Favorite horror film with a female killer?
Oh,
Mercy.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know that one, but Sleepaway Camp 2. I already mentioned it earlier, but
okay.
Angela, man, look her up. She's terrifying.
That's a really good question.
I can't remember massive details about it now because it's been a long time since I've seen it, but Misery.
Yes. Oh my God.
That's what I meant to say. Misery, not Mercy. Misery.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I got the M right.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Mercy was, so I just was like, yeah, okay. Like,
Me
but
too.
yeah, no, like, yeah, we were googling it, trying to figure it. No,
Although,
no.
was she really a killer? Because
She was
Paul
a killer.
made it. Oh, he survived.
Yeah, but she could have been a killer.
could have been. I don't know.
She seemed like she'd done some killing at one point in her life.
I mean, possibly, but can you prove it?
Right.
Okay. What about the mum in Scream 2? How about that?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I'm gonna switch it up and say Christine.
Yes, the female car. God, that movie terrified me. Oh man,
Switching it up.
Yeah, mine is The Ring. Samara really fucking freaked me out when that movie first came out. Yeah. Got to give it to you.
Let me add in Pamela Voorhees from Friday the 13th one.
I figured somebody was going to say that one. Yeah,
she's great.
Okay, thank you for participating in our little Halloween trivia. So, guess we'll just go ahead and jump right into Fear Street, Part 1, 1994.
So, just background: this is based off of the Fear Street books by R.L. Stine. So, perhaps most famously known for his Goosebumps series for kids, R.L. Stine. Fear Street books featured teens and was aimed at an audience slightly older than those who read Goosebumps. The original series started in 1989 with The New Girl and has since developed into 13 different variations. There are approximately 163 books across all iterations. What I was going to say is those Goosebumps books, I remember them coming out just slightly after the Point Horror books. So I don't know if Point Horror was like a UK thing, but I remember like reading the UK and then seeing the Goosebumps things come out, and I was like, those things look like they're for like 9-year-olds. I remember thinking at the time, and I was like, I'm not reading those.
Yeah, they were definitely always like in the library of elementary schools. Like they were very much geared towards young kids. And he specifically, R.L. Stine specifically said that when he wrote Fear Street, he was trying to step it up a notch. Like he said, there's a lot more blood and gore and death in the Fear Street series than there was in Goosebumps.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'll just say something real quick about Goosebumps. I have
no way.
Oh, wow.
I have all my little Goosebumps books here. This is my stack that I've been collecting. So when I mentioned that I didn't really get scared of horror books, I don't remember ever being scared while reading these books. So I'm kind of like you, Mark. But he also did a couple other things like the Snowman and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That was a Point Horror book.
Yeah,
is this a Point Horror book?
They were in America for sure. Beach House was a big Point Horror book when I was a kid, but hell yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're holding out on us, Nick, over there talking about. I don't read that much horror.
He just pulls out like a
I know. It's not as big as you are.
I don't. Yeah, I read all these 25 years ago.
Are those your original books? Are those yours?
No, some of them are. A lot of them I get from like Goodwills and stuff like that because they have tons of them out there.
Because I gave away. I really was annoyed. I gave away all my Point Horror books to some kid who was like 5 years younger than me to be nice, which is it's nice that I did a nice thing. But now as an adult, I'm like, I flipping wish I'd have kept those books. Because now I've got kids myself. Like so, it'd be like cool to give them the books. So I might actually start doing that. I used to love the Snowman. Like honestly, like the Snowman was like one of my favorite books as a kid.
Yep. It says Point, so you're there. Yeah. But he did Choose Your Own Adventure, kind of Fear Street stuff. So this is my only Fear Street book that I have. Everything else is Goosebumps. So
Goosebumps.
I'm gonna have to do what Nick's doing. I'm gonna have to track these books down.
For sure.
All right, so Fear Street Part 1, 1994. The screenplay is by Phil Graziadei and Leah Yaniak. I'm hoping that's how you pronounce her name. The story is by Kyle Killen, Phil Graziadei, and Leah Yaniak. Directed by Leah Yaniak. It stars a bunch of people no one have ever heard of yet. Hopefully, some of these people will continue to go on to be rising stars. That's all I got for the intro. Very minimal.
It was great. That's all you need.
Yeah.
So just a sort of summary. It's a twin city dichotomy between you got two cities. Do you know, it really made me think of The Simpsons. Do you remember they had that rival town? There was Springfield and
Shelbyville.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. That. So anyway, Sunnyvale is the rich side and prosperous, where nothing but good things happen, versus shady side, which is like Springfield, I think, where it is considered the other side of the tracks, poor, misfortune, miserable, no one ever leaves. And Dina is in love with Sam, who leaves and moves to Sunnyvale. Their relationship is the base of all three films, and the centuries-old curse seemingly in play, with more murders, car accidents, and where Sam sees the witch, which kind of kicks off really all three movies.
Yep.
before I jump into sort of questions and stuff, do you know what? Like, I had this whole perception of the three movies of what they were going to be. I was completely wrong. Like, I thought they were like anthology movies. I thought that they were kind of like the same town, but not linked in any way, shape, or form. But I was so when the movie ended, part one ended, I actually honestly thought we weren't going to see the characters again. I thought, oh, cool ending. We'll talk about the ending in a minute, but when it ended, I was like, oh, cool ending to like leave everything like up in the air. Like, I actually quite liked that because I thought it was standalone, and then obviously part two happened. And but I actually sometimes like it when things are left up in the air. Like, so I'm like, okay, that's quite cool. But anyway, so I kind of just go around the room and stuff just before we talk about the movie. Just how well do you think this compares? This obviously came out, it's set in 1994, but in the 90s, there was obviously a rife of horror movies, and some of them we've talked about at the start. How do you guys feel it compares to movies of that time? You know, things like the Blair Witch Project, Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer. There's loads of things that came out, like Misery, actually, Flatliners, Faculty, H2O. Verno, kick off with you. How do you feel it compares to movies that actually did come out at that time?
It's funny because that, like, the 90s Scream, and I might be a little bit wrong, but it seemed like Scream is when horror movies started needing a plot. Before it was just like, we get the kids out there, we just start killing them one by one. And then Scream came out and it was more of a complicated story. And that's what this is. My first time watching, I'm like, this is too convoluted. Luckily I had my fiance with me that's explaining everything to me the whole time. But I thought they did a good job. The kids didn't feel like 90s kids, but what I've noticed is it's hard to do the 90s, like to recreate it and make it feel legit. Like, there's not too many that do that. But I thought it would, like I said, the first time I watched it, I didn't really care for it. I think I sent you a message, Mark. I'm like, this is terrible. But then, and then honestly, I was watching like 20-minute increments. Be like, I'll get to that another day, and I would put it back on. After I watched them all, I did go back. I watched them all again, and I liked it way more. Just the way that they put things in there that you wouldn't have picked up on originally. And then, just as I said, it was too convoluted the first time, like overly confusing. And it wasn't necessarily a whodunit, but it was a more complicated whodunit. But I thought it was cool. It was definitely, you could tell like it was influenced by Scream, obviously, you know what I mean? But I thought it was a good, compared to those other ones, it holds up pretty well.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those points, and I'm not shocked that Verno went back and watched it a second time. He does with his comic books too, and so I love the fact that you go back and you have time to watch those things. And
I rewatched the first one, by the way. I rewatched it. I didn't watch all three. I rewatched all three. I rewatched the first one though.
I would rewatch them because, and we'll kind of get to this as we get going with the other films, but you don't quite know that you're going to get this kind of story when you're watching the first
not at all
one. Right. And so, and it's really creative how they kind of just layer it, film after film after film after film. And you don't even know you're seeing something you're going to see later. Yeah. And so I really kind of appreciated that. As far as like the tone of the movie, I think Verno's absolutely right. It's really hard to capture that magic from the 90s and that mindset from the 90s. They did a pretty good job. I think Stranger Things did a better job of playing kids that aren't modern kids, modern being in this decade or generation. So I did enjoy that. Of course, there's a lot of tropes to other horror movies that we've seen before and other kind of shows and horror shows and things. So I think the overall tone was fairly good. I think it was okay. And, but I was kind of like Verno, I didn't quite enjoy the first movie as much as the subsequent ones, and I didn't know it was going to be a continuation story. So that maybe would have changed my perspective of it.
Yeah, I think I would jump in and say that the first one is definitely the weakest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cookie, how do you feel this compares to other 90s horror movies?
What these guys said, to be honest with you. I think maybe because I don't want to say corrupted because of my lack of horror films, but I'm going to use that hopefully to go and kind of credit myself in this film. I thought the first one was fantastic. I went in this and I was like, okay, this looks like Stranger Things. It's a ripoff from Stranger Things. I didn't see the trailer. I had no idea what the story was about. And just as it kind of progressed on, I was like, wow, the writing is top notch. These kids are doing a really good job. I don't know how old they are. Some of them look like they're like Tom Holland's age, like maybe 21, but they looked and they felt like it was they felt like the 90s. And I was a kid who was born in the 80s, but I lived through the 90s and really enjoyed it. That was my bread and butter. So for me, it was like reliving like childhood.
Yes, it was not
Minus-
Stacey Dash being 32 playing 19. No,
Exactly.
these kids are all like 19,
Hell,
20, 21.
Yeah.
No, the main character, Dina's 28 freaking years old. Blew
Is
my
she
mind.
really? I thought I read she
Yes.
was only
Wow.
22.
Oh,
No,
she
she's
looks
28, unless I don't know. I'm gonna look it up, but I'm pretty damn sure she's 28. That blew my mind. It was really wow.
But needless to say, it really felt that. And from the jump, right in the beginning, you're like, all right, where's this going to go? How's this going to take place? And it all literally unfolds as like a really nice blanket, like a pig in the blanket. And at the end, exactly what Mark said, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
I'm hooked. I'm ready to go. And I literally binge watched all three. It was so good for me. And I didn't expect to like it, and I didn't expect to enjoy it because I don't like this genre at all. But it's a movie that I would definitely rewatch multiple times.
Nice. That's some high praise.
Yeah.
What about you, Jasmine, then? How do you feel compares to other 90s horror movies?
Listen, I tuned out immediately in the first film with the sequence of the kids going to the football game, because whoever wrote that has never in their lives attended any sort of high school that even had a football team, because there's no freaking way that you fit 56 high school kids from the team on one bus and the band on the same bus and the cheerleaders on the same bus. That would never happen. It doesn't matter how small of a town you're in. Of course, I live in Texas. I'm completely biased by the way that we run college football down here, or college football, high school football down here. So that whole first thing, I was like, this is not going to work for me. So thankfully, like we got over that pretty quick. I thought it felt really cheesy in the way that 90s horror stuff felt cheesy, like The Faculty and Urban Legends and that kind of stuff. But given like it felt like it was genuine, like it didn't feel forced. I thought that the acting was a bit subpar for the most part. The writing was okay. It kind of stumbled a bit for me, but overall, the overall story, which can't really talk about till you get to all three, but like getting through this first one, it still did kind of throw some surprises my way, because there was at least one death that I was not expecting. Like the one death where I was like, oh, there's no way they're going to kill that character. Like, it's fine. I'm not even going to worry about that person. But it did once it started rolling, it was kind of like, okay, where are we going? And why are these things happening? And why do we keep seeing the flashbacks, and why, how do they know, and who's controlling all of this stuff? So it did make me very curious, at the very least, as to what is really going on in this town. But I still think of the three films, this one is my least favorite.
Totally.
I was gonna say, in terms of my sort of comparisons of 90s movies, like the beginning sequence really did like remind me so much of Scream. It literally was like, I felt like it was taken out of the Scream book. It was more like where I think it was the character, is it Heather, where she's like running through the mall and getting stabbed in the back, and it's all horrific and all that. And I was like, this feels like when Drew Barrymore is running and you think she's going to escape and she doesn't, and stuff like that. And I also I know you shouldn't have hopes for the first person.
Never get attached to the first people that show up in a horror movie. Come on, man.
I know.
Come on.
I did, because she's like, again, a Stranger Things main character. Like I've got it written here. She plays Robin. I think doesn't she come in isn't in the most recent season of
season 3?
And I was
really?
like, yeah, she's the girl who works in, again, the bloody shopping mall. She works in the drinks place, the
ice cream shop.
Ice cream
the
shop.
ice cream shop. Yeah. And I recognized her straight away. And again, we're going to probably talk about Stranger Things so much in this show. But so I was like, okay, so she's a big part of Stranger Things. She, I thought there's got to be more to her in this thing, and because she was quite spicy as well, like flips that.
You know better. I know
off.
you know better.
I know, but I was like, she's got to survive. She's like, and
she's the Drew Barrymore. She's
I know.
One, you know what I mean? She's gonna be the star. She's Uma Thurman's kid, by the way.
Yeah. No, I looked that up. Yeah. So yeah, and so there was a big part of me that thought she's got to stand a chance of surviving. And Cookie said it earlier, I watched none of the trailers for this deliberately.
Me neither. Yeah.
But that opening sequence, though, I thought was like literally out of Scream. So, but I loved all of the references throughout the movie, though. I want to talk about the 90s, like AOL. Do you know how much AOL costs? Like, you know,
that was great.
Like the Walkman scene on the bus, like, you know, even I'll talk about music later, but honestly, some of the music, even through all three films, like well, definitely the first and the second film, where there's some good 90s classic tracks kicking in. And I was like, honestly, there's so much I love about the music, but just all the 90s references and everything. But yeah, no, I don't know, in terms of compare, like, is it as good? It's hard to say, is it as good as some of those 90s films? Probably no. But like, I enjoyed it though. Like,
yeah.
So, anyway, so moving on to next sort of part of this little thingy. I forgot my words then. Anyway, knowing that this is obviously part of a trilogy, how do you feel this compares as sort of a standalone movie? And like I said, when I watched it, I thought it genuinely was going to be a standalone. So I knew it was part 1, 2, and 3, all set in the same town. But I just thought it was like an anthology going backwards and sort of showing you like the town's past. And I thought it was, and I've seen this done before, I genuinely thought that's what was happening. But like, so obviously I won't say my thoughts just yet, but yeah, I'll start with you, Cookie. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel it's a good standalone film, or do you feel that you can't really watch it as a standalone film?
I don't think you can watch it as a standalone film. I think it leaves so much unresolved and wanting more from it. And now that you guys have kind of opened my eyes a little bit, since I feel that I am a little bit biased, since I don't have as much in my repertoire as you guys do, I take it a little bit differently. And I see it as I don't have anything to refer it to, whereas you guys have a lot of references to go by, and you can go and say, oh, Scream. And you're getting bits and pieces of elements that you enjoyed from previous films. You're like, I want something original. For me, it's all original. So I get to enjoy it for face value, and I don't see it past that point. But after watching all three, I don't think it can stand alone by itself. I think it has to be something that continues on, and I'm happy it does.
And Verno, what about yourself? How do you feel? Do you feel it like is able to stand on its own?
No, I mean, I agree with exactly what Cookie said. I mean, because pretty much like I said, that was my experience. I watched the first one and I was like, ugh, ugh. You know what I mean? I didn't love it. You know, I didn't love the kids. I didn't love a lot of things about it, but I'm just repeating myself. But now having the context, I liked it way, way more. And I was just able to understand it. It's too convoluted. And I've heard that argument, or I've heard other people complain about it being too, it's all over the place. You don't know what the hell is going on. Who are these people? It's confusing, but I don't think it stands alone that well.
Nick, what do you think?
I just reiterating what everyone said so far. I think that we don't know enough to really enjoy the first one at its full capacity. I think you have to have these two other films to really give you context onto who these other killers are, what the power is behind this bewitching of everybody. And so I think it does okay, and it'd be an interesting wide open ending if they didn't have if they answered some of the questions throughout the film, but they didn't, and they wrote it to not be a standalone film. So it doesn't work as a standalone film, in my opinion, just because it was never meant to. Right. And everybody touched on that. So,
but you said it better than anyone said. I just want
sure. I think like not it could not be a standalone film, but I think retroactively, after you have seen all three, then the first one is better. Now, I did not go back and rewatch anything, but once I finished the whole trilogy, I appreciated the first one more. But upon first viewing of the first one, without having seen the second two, it to me, it just doesn't, it feels not necessarily incomplete. It's just like, I'm not sure I'm invested enough to care. Like, I want to know like what the story is behind this town and this curse that you guys keep talking about. But as far as the individual people in the first film, I was not invested in anyone in the first film except Henry. I did like Henry.
That's a good point.
I think, like I said, my perception was when I went in, I thought it was anthology style. I found the first movie though very confusing, and I'm glad I really watched the first one, because I think actually rewatching the first one with the knowledge of what happens in part 2 and part 3 made the first one a lot more enjoyable for me. So the first one, I was very up and down and very confused. And then in the last sort of that like last 20-30 minute scene, again, this is like felt like Scream, because, you know, was it the last, is Scream like the final part like 40 minutes long or something?
Yes, in Stu's house.
Yeah, in Stu's house, it's like 40 minutes long. This whole last scene was like 30 minutes long. And I was like, this feels like Scream, where the last scene is like so long on its own. And so when I got really into that last scene, because it was like real battle, I get like, you know, like they were all coming together, the teens and everything, and not all of them unfortunately make it. And but when it ends, like with her chucking the girl in the boot and stuff, and it kind of just ends, and I thought, okay, cool. Like I was like, if they're gonna leave us hanging, that's actually a really cool way of leaving us hanging. And but yeah, it doesn't, you know, I'm glad that actually we got to see what happens next though, so which makes it a really difficult standalone movie. But you couldn't just sit down and just put this on and not carry on going.
No.
So.
Yeah. You know, I will say, you touched on the length of the final sequence. I thought all three of these movies were too long. They all pushed right up against 2 hours, and that was far too long for all three films. You could have cut 20 minutes out. You could have had a really good, a tighter story if you had pulled in 140 instead of pushing it to 2 hours. I think that just gave the storytellers too much room, and they filled it with junk. And so that kind of takes away from I think each of the movies had a bunch of stuff they could have cut out.
We didn't talk about this earlier. This was originally meant to be released in the theaters rather than on Netflix. And I wonder how they would have released it. Would they have released all three in one month?
They said it would have been month to month to month. They would have done a 3-month run where they released one film a month. This was when originally the film rights were purchased by Disney underling Hollywood Studios, which is now defunct, way back in 1997. So it has been sitting in development hell forever. Wow. But then when Disney bought 21st Century Fox, then it kind of was just like up in the air. So the other production studio, Charon Entertainment, they decided to break off their contract, and that was when Netflix stepped in 2020 and was like, hey, we'll buy it. And so Netflix did it a week to week to week. So they did all three films 1 week apart. My favorite thing about horror films is like the killers and the death scenes. Okay, like that's just the most fun to talk about. So in the first film, we kind of get introduced into the whole like mystery of Shadyside and all of the bad things that happen in this town and all of the other serial killers that have been around before. Do you guys have a favorite of the Shadyside killers? So we had the milkman, who was in the 50s. We had Ruby Lane, who was in the 70s. We had Ryan Torres, who was the guy at the beginning of this film that killed Heather in the mall. And then we had the Nightwing killer from the 70s. So, I mean, there were a couple of more. There's the kid with the baseball bat, whose name I can't even remember. And there was the guy that had like that weird pointy mask, whose name I can't remember either. But did you guys have a favorite of all of the Shadyside killers?
Ruby Lane.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Nick?
All right. Ruby Lane.
Ruby Lane. Quick answer. Boom. Go, Cookie.
I don't know if it was correct, but Henry's girlfriend, or soon to be, was going to be his girlfriend, possibly the girl who kissed him for the first time.
She was a killer?
No, but the guy that killed her.
Oh, the milkman killed her.
It was a milkman.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Jason. Final answer. All day. Nightwing, dude. Nightwing. I'm on a big slasher film kick. As I said, I just rewatched every single Friday the 13th movie, so it was a pleasant surprise to be like, that's freaking Jason. So I loved that. I thought he was by far and away the one that I liked the most. But to your point, the freaky little guy with the bat, that was I wish we would have learned more about them. That's probably why you don't know his name. They never gave us anything on him other than that he's a freaky little guy and he's got a bat.
Oh man, I thought Nightwing was the scariest for sure.
Right.
I liked Ruby Lane too. I liked the creepiness of her. Like I love her sort of introduction, just sitting on the street, humming some sort of very, I don't know what it was, like 1950s sort of lullaby type thing. And then just her just go nuts. But then I love, I can't remember his name, the boy who pleasured himself in the bathroom. What was his name? Simon, yeah. Like how he's like, she's hot, but she's crazy. She's hot, crazy. Like I think the two together could have their own show. Like it would be great. Like it would make a great police drama. Like,
Oh, jeez.
So, but no, I love just like how he's in the street, and I'm like, why do they do this in horror movies? Why do you go to the crazy girl humming
Yes.
the weird lullaby?
Why do you
Like,
talk to strangers in horror movies? I will never ever understand it. Why do you split up and why do you talk to strangers? I don't know. I would never do it. No. Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm.
Well, I think that Ruby's the most scary to me, just because she has a sound that comes with her scariness too. So she's humming that song, and they can play it before she even shows up, and it's already like raising the hair on your arm.
Mhm.
Like Jaws, you mentioned Jaws. Without that song, so it's an auditory complementary thing that just makes her scarier than anybody else. Yeah, dude can run with the axe at you. That's scary too. That's sort of the pointy nose guy. The little kid with the bat was just freaky. You know? But like we have like all these we have like the cast of Slipknot. We have like the whole band of Slipknot here. But she's just like, there's something about her that's just freaks me out. And I think it's that stupid song.
Yeah.
You know? And that
it's also freaky
look.
that she moves so slow. She moves with no sense of purpose whatsoever, just humming that song and playing with that razor blade. And it's kind of like
whipping it around. You're like, oh God, forget it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's something more scary about a killer that's just taking their time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah.
That's
pretty much that's Jason. Jason rarely ever runs, but magically he still gets to you.
I think my favorite was the Milkman. I'm gonna go with Cookie on that one. I just think he reminded me of Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is one of my favorite characters in all of literature and film. But yeah, it's just freaky. Dude just kind of overpowers you and like stabs you right up close and personal. It's really, really freaks me out. So
and he'll lick your face.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are also comic book people, so I don't know if you guys have read Ice Cream Man. I kind of got a lot of vibes from that as well.
Right, the Milkman?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's true.
Okay. Did we have any favorites of the characters in this film? Any of the teens, did any of them stand out to you as like, I really hope that this person makes it? Because I had one and they didn't make it.
I don't know his name, but the only character that I didn't dislike was the black kid.
Henry.
Yeah. Henry.
Exactly.
And I've heard that from a lot of people. He's
because he was the brains.
Right. That Dina, I said this to you, Nick. This was Dina's thing. She's got two faces. Her one face is she just smelled a fart and she's like angry about it. She's not just like, ew, she's like mad.
Yeah.
And then the other face is that she just smelled her own fart and she's like proud of it. I can't stand her at all. But Henry.
All right. We got one vote for Henry. Anybody else want to jump in?
I'll definitely say Henry as well. I think he's had the most character development and he's grown so much. And you can't help but love the kid. You just root for him on every step of the way. So
yeah, I would totally agree. And Henry's the most fun, the most relatable. I think we're gonna go 3-0 on the guest panel here for Henry, because everybody else is pretty annoying, I thought.
Oh, Henry was in a Nickelodeon show.
He actually has more acting experience than anyone else in all of these trilogies.
I
liked him.
He was in some show that my kids watched. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, he's like a rapper too. So yeah.
Do you know what? The person I did like Henry because I always he reminded me of like the sort of the Randy of the Scream franchise.
Yes.
Like he's the guy with all the answers and shit. Like, and even they'd say that, like, come on, witch boy, like, you know, like
he's the guy with the information. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But do you know what? I actually liked is it Kate? Damn
it, Mark, you keep taking my people.
But I love a spicy sort of female, and I honestly, I love just her confidence. And
as soon as she was like, "Fuck it, this thing wants Sam. This thing doesn't want us. Let's get rid of her." I was like, "Yep, that's the one. I like her.
No,
I like her. She's my favorite."
I loved it when Dina nicked the copper's gun, and then Sam was like, "You nicked the copper's gun," and she's like, "Yeah, fuck, she did." Like, and I was like, "Yeah," like, and that's what the moment she said that line, I was like, "Yep, that's my character." All right, that there, but like, yeah. Anyway, unfortunately, yeah, we're talking. You're gonna move on to this now, aren't you?
Yeah. So now that we've already talked about all of our favorites, what about a favorite death scene? So we had Simon. He got hit in the face with an axe by Nightwing. We had Kate. Unfortunately, she got put in a bread slicer by the Milkman. Dina killed Sam. That's kind of cheating, but it kind of happened. So that's a death scene that we threw in there. Of course, very beginning, Mark's hope for the film, Heather, was killed by Ryan in the mall. And then there was just everyone that was dead at the hospital. Like, it's just too many people to count at the hospital that died. So did we have any favorite, or even one that I didn't mention, any favorite deaths in the first film? Stylistically or like plot wise, whatever you
think it's almost
best.
like I was gonna let someone else answer first, because there's just one of them is like one of the best death scenes in any horror movie ever. It's like they nailed it with that bread cutter scene. That's the coolest ever.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone get killed by a bread slicer in any film.
Yeah,
that was great.
I think the carnage afterward, like when the camera pans to what is left of Kate's head, I was just like, that was completely unnecessary. But yes.
I know my hand sort of went over my eyes, and I was like, I can't look at that.
I wanted to see it.
I had to see it.
I wanted to see it as well.
But I think that's the best one, because that's the character I thought would make it, and so it made it more impactful. And
I genuinely thought she was going to make it. They built her.
Well, she was too snarky and too entertaining, and plus they had put her as like Henry's love interest. So you just figured, like, come on, Henry's got to have a happy ending. Like, she's going to make it. Nope.
I know. I honestly thought she was going to make it. I genuinely did not see her death coming.
Me neither.
Like, I thought Simon was going to get it before the final.
I figured he would, just because he was an idiot.
Yeah. I mean, there was
so are all five of us in agreement that was the best death?
That's the best. Yeah, that's the best.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's the best, but also the worst. Because I guess if you're going to get killed, I mean, a bread slicer surely got to be the best way to go, right? So
I mean, come on, like, isn't that the point of horror films at some stage where it's like, okay, who died the worst in this film?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd just like to stay on the record. I do not want to die by bread slice.
I think honestly, it's maybe because this is the only emotional connection that we do have in the film. Why it has so much gravitas to it, and it is just gruesome. It honestly is just gruesome.
Hell yeah.
Sure.
All right. So the end. Did the ending of this first film make you want to keep going?
Oh yeah, definitely,
100%.
I mean, I genuinely didn't think it was going to overlap into part two, because I thought it was anthology sort of, like I said. But like when I saw the end, I started to Google thinking, oh, is this the end of these characters? Because I generally, for some reason, thought it was anthology style. And but yeah, once I thought, well, are they ever going to come back? Are they going to do a part four and we get to see what happens to Dina and Sam? But I was glad the moment part two opened with Dina and Sam. I was like, okay, I see what's happening. So I when it ended with that close of that boot, and it was Dina and Sam, and I was like, I want to know what happens.
I think it did make me want to keep going, because there have been plenty of times where it's like I get to the end of a film that I know is part of a group, like A Quiet Place. Fantastic films, but A Quiet Place was so stressful to watch that when I finished the first one, I was like, there's no fucking way I'm sitting here and I'm watching the second one right behind it. Like, I'm not doing that. But I ended up watching all three of these films in one sitting, which is also why I complained about them being too long. But it did really make me want to go on, because I was like, well, damn, if they went through all that work and Sam still gets like turned to this horrible, I don't know what, zombie thing at the end, like, well, what the hell happens next? What about tying up the loose ends? Was there anything in the first film that you felt like didn't get addressed?
I think they got to it all eventually. You know what I mean? I think there was quite a bit that they didn't tie up, but to Mark's point, like they continued on. You know what I mean? They answered the questions later. So I think there was. It left me. I was jokingly going to say I didn't want to watch the next one when I finished it, but in reality, once I did finish it, I did. I think we put it on that night and we watched the second one that night. So I thought it made me want to keep going, and it tied up things that should have tied up for that specific film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think part one tied up anything. I think it just laid up loads of mystery, and basically, things got answered later, but.
I didn't feel unsatisfied, I guess I would say, at the end of the first one. It's not like I was like, oh damn, what about this character? Except Kate. I'm still salty about Kate. Damn you. First film. All right, out of 5, what would you guys rate just the first one, not compared to the whole trilogy, but the first film by itself?
Go on, Verno.
3.5.
Oh, sorry.
3.5, you said?
3.5, yes.
Okay, we got a 3.5.
Verno, what do you think?
I'm gonna give it a super generous 4.25
Oh,
because
wow.
when I watched it again, I was like, "This is awesome!" Like my fiance, she ate it up the whole time. She loved every minute of every movie, and I was like, "Really?" And then I watched it again. I'm like, "This is brilliant!" Like, it's super dramatic. The way that you know what I mean. I honestly didn't get it the first time. I'm like, why are they killing this bitch? Like, what was going on? Like, why does she need to die? That's crazy. Get her head out of that crab tank or lobster. But like, I loved it the second time I watched it, man. I thought it was fire, to be honest with you. Yeah, but the kids are annoying as hell. But
Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
I got over that. And now, plus, I knew they were going to die, which is like, you know what? I can stand you for a little bit. You're going to die eventually. Go ahead and jerk off in the bathroom. That's I'll get over it.
Because that's normal when you're running from your life or from some horror supernatural thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so weird.
All right, Nick, what you got?
I don't know, man. I was gonna be like hypercritical of the first one without the knowledge of the second and third movie. Yes. This is a very weak movie, I think. I mean, there was some cool enjoyment things there. The killings weren't that great, except for Kate. I mean, an axe to the head. We've seen it.
Yeah.
Stabbing.
Yeah, but it was surprising though. We didn't see that coming when he got axe to the head. I was like, holy shit.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Now, when you're used to like horror films, I'm not very used to horror films. It's not shocking to see people you didn't expect die. But I think that as a standalone on its own, I'm only going to give it like a 2.5.
Okay.
It's like halfway there. But
all right,
when you put in context the other stuff, it goes much higher.
Yeah. Mark?
After hearing Cookie and Verno, I was going to go with a 3, but I've decided to increase it to a 3.5.
Okay.
I think definitely it is worth a rewatch, like 100%. Like I think giving it a rewatch, I'm like, there's so many like winks and nods that set things up for 2 and 3. And I know with marketing on a standalone, but having it on a rewatch, I definitely has bumped up my score. So.
Right. I was just gonna say, like, even at the end of the whole thing, and this has to do with the first one, I remember being like, why are they putting? And again, I don't know his name, but he's the black dude with the bandana wrapped around his head.
Oh, Martin.
I'm like, it's weird that he's playing such a vital role at the end here. But then when I went back and watched the first one, it's like, damn, he's there in the first scene.
Yeah.
Like
he's
him,
at the mall.
I mean? They tied a lot of things in that I didn't notice at first. And I think the way it was written was really, really like it smart. Like they wrote their ass off planning everything out. So it's so much better on a rewatch. But
it was like Kate's aunt like gets a tiny little scene in the first one. Like, and she obviously has a role in part 2 and part 3. Well, a bigger role in part 2, and but yeah, so yeah, like you say, there's just so much in the first one that really is really cleverly. Well, if you think about it, it's actually really cleverly planned and written. To be honest, so
I'm gonna go with Cookie though on this one, and I'm giving it a low 2.5. I had to readjust. I was gonna give it a 2. I bumped it up to a 2.5 because of the third film. But
Nick gave it 2.5.
So to me, like, just without 2 and 3, this movie is a mess. Like, it's a mess. I didn't enjoy the characters except for Henry and Kate. Like that's not enough to carry a film like this. So yeah, the first film gets a 2.5 from me, which gives it an average panel rating of 3.25 for Fear Street 1994.
No 69? What the hell?
I'm so wrong show, Verno. Wrong show.
I mean, Robbie rounds everything up to 4.69.
What is this?
It does.
Dudes.
Like, yeah, dude, yeah. I've never known like maths to work that way.
You never been to Alabama, buddy.
All right, so Fear Street Part 2, 1978. We got a different screenwriter this time. Zach Olchowski is the new addition here, still directed by Leah Joniak, and same cast, except we've got a whole bunch of new people. We've got Sadie Sink, who plays Ziggy. You will recognize Sadie from Stranger Things, of course. We've got Emily Rudd, Ryan Simpkins, McCabe Sly, Ted Sutherland, Jordana Spiro, Jillian Jacobs, and that's it for like the new additions. So this film kind of plays up to one of the killers that we met in the first film, and that is the Nightwing killer. So basically this whole film takes place at Camp Nightwing. So Mark, if you want to do the summary of it.
Yeah, sure. So this is the Sunnyvale versus Shadyside. I do love the names of these towns. Like, why would you ever live anywhere like this? Anyway, the rivalry's in full effect, and by the second film, we go back in time to 1978 to a summer camp shared by both towns. The campers gear up for a big color war. Yeah. Color in speech marks, capture the flag. We get to see the origin of the Nightwing killer, Tommy Slater, and in true anthology format, we get to see a new cast of characters and a setting with the same underlying curse theme. So, sorry. Anyway, so how well, guys, like, do you feel this plays up? How well or poorly do you feel this second film lives up to sort of 70s type horror movies? Like, I'm not a massive 70s.
Okay, first of all, that really freaked me out because I didn't know that you were moving it, and I was like, what the hell is that thing like moving in the corner of his screen?
It's got the axe and everything.
Oh man.
Yeah.
No way. I couldn't have that in my place.
For the sake of people just listening to the podcast, what are you holding, Verno?
It is a sideshow figure 1/6 scale Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, part 3, equipped with axe and bloodstains and Doc Martens, I believe.
It's scary looking.
So, I mean, 70s horror movies are like The Omen, Black Christmas,
Chainsaw,
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Carrie. I mean, I've got loaded Dawn of the Dead, The Wicker Man, Jaws, which we've referenced a few times, Halloween, The Exorcist, Alien, which I know Nick is a big fan of, and yeah, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So
just basically a lot of those films of that era were unwitting teens being attacked for no reason whatsoever.
I think, like Verno said though earlier, like it was before plot was really important.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, oh, look, people in a concentrated area. Let's just kill some of them and
having
keep on moving.
Premarital sex.
You gotta have it. You gotta have it at summer camp, right?
Yeah, I mean, Cookie, have you watched many 70s horror movies?
I've seen a few of those. I wouldn't say like I'm well versed, but I have seen a few of those, and this is a nice touch. It does have a plot, and I think that's the biggest thing that drives this film more than a lot of other films. When you compare it to Alien or Jaws, I mean, there's no comparison. So it just depends on what you're going to compare it to, or what type of 70s film you're going to compare it to. Will this outshine it?
What about you, Verno?
I love the shit out of it. What was the question?
Basically, how do you feel? Because obviously it's set in the 70s. How do you feel compares to movies that were actually made in the 70s?
See, it's set in the 70s, but it feels more like an 80s slasher film.
You know what
I mean?
Yeah.
We had, I think Friday the 13th one might have been like 79 and Halloween was 78, but it feels like all of those 80s Friday the 13th films more so. And I think it's a little, I mean, like you're saying, there's way more plot, but it's not overly convoluted. It's not confusing.
Yeah.
And all that. So I think it compares pretty favorably. There wasn't as many creative kills. There's a dude running around hitting people with an axe.
This one was just like a high body count.
Yeah.
Right. Nice brutality. And this one actually had character development. The characters had to better themselves by the end of the movie. Yeah. Rather than
no way.
Right. You know what I mean? There's none of that in the other films.
Yeah.
It's all about changing the world around them rather than, oh, you're perfect. Just change the system and change the world.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with you, which isn't ever nearly as interesting.
Oh, what about you, Nick?
I think Verno hit a very good point. I think it feels more like an 80s movie. I actually just looked up when Meatballs came out, just as like a good reference point. That actually was released in 79. It had a little bit of element to that. And I don't know. It's hard to compare these to movies that actually were created in the decade that they're supposed to be taking place in. I just feel like it maybe didn't capture the essence of the 70s, but I think it captured more the essence of the 80s. So I completely agree with that. Just the way that the kids were acting and just the scenery and things like that. So I don't know how it compares to movies that came out then, but the decade was a little bit off. I feel like it's like 10 years off. So
I guess
Okay.
it was 78, so it's almost the 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
A precursor kind of.
right. So it kind of fits. It reminds me of Meatballs. If if the alien in Meatballs 2 killed people, then this might be the movie.
I bet they made that decision because there's been so many 80. They didn't want that comparison to Stranger Things too tightly.
Yeah.
And they wanted those 70s songs rather than
Mhm.
having to do the 80s songs, which aren't nearly as good
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Obviously, this is obviously part of a trilogy, but part 2 is here. What do you guys think in terms of, like, did you enjoy it? I mean, I think all 3 of these, I think we're all going to agree, don't make good standalone films, but did you enjoy it kind of as a standalone, or what are your thoughts on how it sits up as a trilogy? Cookie, do you want to jump in? Or?
Yeah, sure. I think it definitely is a lot more enjoyable than the first one. Main reason why is the character development, and you care about these characters a lot more. You want to see what happens to them. You're hoping that more people survive. And you learn from your mistakes in the first one, and you've grown and put it into this film. So I think it does a lot better at purveying a message rather than just trying to set up a whole foundation, which is what they did in the first one. They set up a foundation. The second one, they started to expand on it a lot more. And of course, the third one, they try to go and conclude it all. So it's basically one giant film broken up into 3 parts. And this is where all the meat happens.
What are you, Verno?
My first time experience with it, I thought the middle section was kind of boring. Like Cookie said, the characters were way better in this, but watching it again, they spent a lot of time in the second act of the film developing the relationship between the redheaded Stranger Things girl and the character that ends up being Sheriff Good. And there's so many subtle things there. And that's what I appreciated so much the second time, is he hasn't fully committed to his deal with the devil that he's made just yet. And you don't know that the first time, because you don't know that that's his deal. You know what I mean? So their conversations and everything with them, and he's like, well, my dad asked me to take on this responsibility. I'm not so sure about it yet. And he's like, he sets these people on the course by writing that name on the wall and getting them all killed, but he's not happy about it. He's not thrilled about it. So his character is way more interesting in this one, and their relationship is way more interesting. And then I think the development between the 2 sisters is by far the best character development in the whole trilogy, for sure. So I really liked it, especially the second time. I thought it was really good.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think if we're trying to think if this is a better standalone than the first one so far, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
You can almost make this a standalone. The first movie, we didn't really have a lot of answers to why things were happening, and we developed those answers in this movie. Now we were preloaded with a little bit of knowledge watching the first movie, so we had a little bit of context about where this was going. But I think it almost works as a standalone film. We had interesting characters. We had character development, because a lot of those characters were brand new, the majority of them, right? So we had interesting characters. We were kind of eased into this situation. Hey, there's a witch, and there's a curse, and there's rival towns, and there's sisters that hate each other, and there's a boyfriend or a possible boyfriend. And then we learn a reason why this curse exists, right? Throughout this film, we learn that, there's names on a wall. We see the origin of the killer. We see the killer kill people. And then we see a conclusion when the killers die, and we see the sisters die towards the end, and one of them gets resurrected. And we almost have a clean ending too. It's like, do you believe in the curse, right? And he's like, yeah, totally. And then, no, she's crazy, dude. I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
So it's almost a complete story.
Yeah.
We just are gifted with the knowledge of the first movie with this one. So I think it could work if you added a couple little more things in the second one. But as a standalone, I think it's pretty close to being a good standalone.
I would 100% agree with that. And earlier I said that these films were too long. If you took off the beginning and the end of this film, you have a standalone film. That's an hour and 37 minutes long. If you take out the part where we're trailing from the first film, and then the ending where it all wraps up and it's like, oh my God, you're Ziggy. Like, if we get rid of all of that, this film could be completely standalone, because they give you enough information in this one, because there's enough character development, because you still get the origin of one of the killers, but you also get all of the other killers minus Ryan, who's the newest one, who's not born yet, probably. So this one honestly was my favorite in the entire trilogy. It was so much better than both the first and the third film. And it really does have a lot to do with the characters. So when we went back to the same people in the third film that were in the first film, it was just kind of like, why? Like the people in the second film were just so much better than like the people in the first and third film.
Oh yeah.
So I think of all of them, this one has the potential to be standalone if we just take off the beginning and the end, and it could just be a movie about serial killer at camp that is based on the legend of a witch that haunts this town.
I think the second film, I actually quite liked once they did kick in and you get to see Dina and Sam show up and they go and find Ziggy as an adult. And then it kind of flashes back to 1978, and I think that the whole part, I love the fact that I don't know 90% of this movie was 1978, and actually the killer died at the end, and there was sort of no resurrection really, and of the killers that were and it kind of did feel like in the 1978 kind of got an ending. That they, I guess, I know we jump back to it at the end and we get to see Ziggy as an adult, but I think if you, like you say, you could take those two bits off and it does make a good standalone movie. But I actually did really enjoy watching all of these characters, because initially I was like, oh, how's this going to go now? Because it's all new characters. Am I going to get into meeting all these new people? But actually I did. Yeah. And I liked kind of that the killer, that is sort of one killer hunting them down. It was very, I don't know, it did feel like sort of 70s, 80s slasher, because he was almost like a zombie killer, a bit like a Jason. Like there was no it was just kill, like that was all he was thinking, was just kill people. There was no reason or rhyme behind it. And I did like as well that we got to see a little bit more about the curse, finding the room with the names on and stuff like that. So I love the fact that we got to see more of the mystery unveiled in this movie. But I enjoyed it as a 90% standalone.
So we talk a lot about Scream, or we have been talking a lot about Scream. And of course, everyone's favorite character, Randy, has rules to everything. There's rules to surviving a horror film. There's rules to surviving a sequel. And there are rules to a trilogy. One of Randy's rules for a sequel is his number one rule: the body count is always bigger, which is definitely the case for this one. I mean, I lost count of how many campers just got killed. Like, I really was not expecting so many dead kids, but there's a whole shit ton of dead kids in this film. And one of his other rules is the death scenes are always more elaborate with more blood and gore. And even though we didn't always see the body, but like heads got lobbed right off. Like poor Gary was in the bathroom or the outhouses and his head just went right off. That was so yeah, we got more gore in this one. And then Randy's third rule for sequels is never, ever, under any circumstance, assume that the killer is dead, which we got a whole lot of that near the very end of this film. So same rules as the last one. Did we have any favorite killers this time? We got a lot of returners, but we basically got Nightwing's origin story. So did we have a favorite killer in this film?
Nightwing.
Yeah, I think the Nightwing killer, like he got 90% of the movie. I wasn't really that bothered that they suddenly showed all the other killers at the end. Like, it didn't really interest me. I kind of liked that we had this Nightwing crazy axe dude running around just chopping people up.
I thought it was really gross how the other killers came out of that blob thing.
Yeah,
I was like, that's a bit too much detail. Thank you for that. I didn't need a blob in addition to murderous killers running around.
There's always a blob.
All right.
I wish they would have put the bag on his head earlier in the movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They should have just got to that. Like, I'm sure, I assume you guys know, but Friday the 13th Part 2, that's what Jason looks like, is he's got the sack on his head. So that's, obviously an homage to that, which was dope.
I did not know that. I think I saw the Friday the 13th movie that Jared Padalecki did. So that was like a remake of a remake.
Oh, I liked that one. Yeah,
I enjoyed it, but that's literally the only Friday the 13th movie I've ever seen.
You're not missing a whole hell of a lot. I mean, really, they're pretty dated.
But Jasmine, you bring up a good point. So I'm trying to think. So we have two different ways of resurrecting right now, right? They have like a T-1000 Terminator kind of an aspect where they can kind of mold back together and they can reach out and grab you.
Which is not fair. That is not
Right.
fair.
It's not. So, but then that kind of makes you get more creative about how do you continuously destroy this creature, even
Right.
in that kind of a state, maybe. So that's like one way to take care of it. But then the other one is like, what's the threshold of kill? Because they blow them up in the first movie, right?
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
explode them and they T-1000 back.
Yep.
But then in the other ones, they kind of just spawn another one. They spit it out of that little weird heartbeat, right?
Yes.
So it's like, well, wait, what's the criteria for them spawning a new one versus them molding back together? So that was kind of confusing. I agree about the head garment, the burlap bag that they had to put on there. I thought that was pretty cool. I wish it would have been added earlier. And that leads me to believe like they're not using sight. Are they just using their instinct? Because why wouldn't he just
I think it's blood.
Yeah, it's
That's
the blood,
annoying.
the smell.
But
But in the second
if that's
movie,
the
it was
case,
shady
who
ciders.
picks who? Like, we know
Yeah.
that we know who puts the name on the wall, but like you
Right.
put Tommy's name on the wall, and Tommy just is indiscriminately killing a whole bunch of people at the camp. Like,
Well,
it didn't make any sense to me.
Well, because I think in the first movie it was the blood, but the second movie was the fact that they're shady ciders,
Mhm.
right? It was.
oh yeah,
there
because
was
he
no
did
blood
only
at
kill
all.
Shady Ciders, didn't
He
he?
was
Yeah.
only
Mm.
killing shady ciders. He wasn't killing anybody with blood on them. I thought it was going to be the moss. They kind of hinted at that it was the red moss kind of thing because they played that.
Yeah.
They played that in the first movie, but then this one was like, no, he waits for the Sunny.
Yeah, because he only killed blue shirts.
Yeah, he waited for them to leave. Remember when they were captured? He waited for the blue shirt or the red shirt to leave, and then there was only blue shirts left, and he just went in there and just whipped them all up. They were always by themselves. They were never with the
Goodness.
other.
Yeah,
the
the
other
same
two.
thing with the kid with the glasses.
Exactly.
Interesting.
They don't follow their own rules.
Yeah, they
Quite a
kind
few
of did.
times.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, because like it made me wonder. I think by the time we get to the third one, which is late, but like when we know what is happening and who is controlling everything, you go back and you think like, okay, but in the first film, people who saw the witch are the ones that die, right? Okay, so those are the ones that have like the blood connection. But as far as everything else, like the only other thing I could think of is when their name is put on the wall. Basically, if they're possessed by the devil, then maybe it's just like trying to go out and get a high body count because like
Mhm.
I don't.
The devil is feeding off of the blood of shady ciders. So you know what I mean? That's kind of what they're going for, but it's not the case in the first movie. So it's like
I mean, the first one, I think from how I interpret it, the first one was just Ryan killing people at the mall. And I think that was just going to be it. Although that was a fairly low body count. I don't know how many people he killed other than Heather. Like maybe it's just Heather.
I think
like,
they said 7. It was either 7 or 9.
Yeah, there was somebody
so-
else that she found dead in the lobby, right? Or in
Yeah.
in one of the chairs.
Okay, so I think that was all that was going to be. That like I don't think there was any plan for there to be any other killers. But then unfortunately, Sam accidentally saw some information about the witch and the past. So then that obviously triggered them, like, you know, to go after Sam, and that's decided sort of that's why they made Ryan come back to go after Sam and well, her friends.
Mhm.
I think in the second film, obviously a deal was done. I think it's a bit what Nick said, like Verno said about the high body count. I think it's a case of, you know, the devil wants as many people as he can, so just kill them off. Although I don't necessarily agree, just because you get killed by a serial killer doesn't make you go to hell. I mean, that's not how it works. But anyway, I guess it's how it works in these films. And so like obviously I think it was again to get the high body count. So yeah, that's kind of, and I assume it's probably again with the third one, the high body count. So
Yeah.
I just think in the first one they kind of had to switch it up actually straight away in the first movie because Sam got that information.
Well, because she
but-
touched the bones.
Yeah, and and
Yeah.
obviously that helps with part 3. So
Yeah. All right. So we got a whole new cast of characters. Who are our new favorites in this one?
gone.
Stranger Things girl. I will say.
Yeah. Okay,
I just
all right,
like
all right.
her. She's a
Ziggy?
cute kid. She's a decent actor. And I liked her character. And as I said, she actually has development and her relationship with her sister for sure.
She was very no bullshit.
Yeah,
I liked
yeah.
her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like she was playing a fairly similar character to Stranger Things, but
Right.
Yes.
but I have to say Ziggy, and I think Cindy as well, but Ziggy and Cindy's relationship was very good. I felt like it was a good dual sister relationship, and I quite liked seeing that on screen. And I liked the fact that you didn't know that she was Ziggy until the end, like, you know, or I think that was quite a good little reveal. But I think Verno and Nick has said, like Stranger Things girl for me is my favorite.
I like Cindy. She was my favorite.
I don't like that she didn't move her lips when she talked. Did you notice that? She did a lot of talking, like she was practicing for ventriloquist. That was kind of weird.
Listen, I had given up on that kind of stuff at the first film. Okay, like at this point, I'm just rolling with whatever happens.
I liked her though. I really did. She was probably my second favorite. I like the two of them for sure.
I like Cindy's like not. She had a lot of fight in her versus like, oh my God, I'm the poor kid and I'm trying to get out of it. Like she, instead of always feeling sorry for herself, she was very much like, okay, well, we got to figure this out. Like we are stuck in a cave. We got to figure it out. We are running from this guy. We got to figure it. Like she was very much, we got to figure it out. And I really like that about her.
Even with the shady side curse, she didn't just be like, well, I guess we're cursed. We'll just live a shitty life. She was like, I got to do something. I'm going to be perfect in trying to get out of this situation. So yeah, I agree.
So a lot of people died, and does anyone have a favorite / worst death scene? Like Cookie, go on, let's start with you.
To kind of piggyback off of what you guys just said, with Cindy trying to get out, I think she got out. Unfortunately, not the way she wanted to get out, but she got out, and I think Nightwing did a fantastic job of fulfilling her dreams.
That is a very, very interesting way to word that, Cookie.
What
about you, Verno?
What was the question?
Favorite death.
Your favorite death.
Oh, favorite death. There was some good ones. I'll go with the kid because we didn't even see it, but just the fact that like
the kid with the glasses.
Like I've said, I guess there was more than one kid. The fat little cute kid.
Yeah.
But I've said it a bunch of times that I just watched all these Friday the 13th movies, and not only do no kids get killed, there are barely any kids ever at camp. And so they always take place before the kids show up. So like when you never see kids get killed in horror movies. So I was thrilled to see this kid die.
What about you, Nick?
I liked Foggy Nelson in the
outhouse.
In the outhouse. You knew who I was talking about. Yeah, so he looks just like Foggy Nelson from Daredevil.
He kind of does. A little bit taller, but yeah, he does.
Hair,
yeah,
and it's the same guy. Anyway, I like the fact that they had to change the size of the hole so his body would fall in there, because it's barely big enough for like her head to like scream down in there, but his whole freaking body falls down in there.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
He was just in Halloween 2018, by the way. He's one of the kids that gets got in a couple Halloween films ago.
Damn, poor Gary can't catch a break.
Yeah, now he's typecasted. Great.
Right.
Mark, did you have a favorite?
The one that stands out the most to me is I honestly, again, didn't think I honestly thought Cindy was in the girl in the future in the 90s. So I assumed that she was getting out. So when that axe hit her, I was like, oh. Like, I think for me, that's sort of the death scene that stands out the most. But the thing about the whole movie really was a hell of a lot of people got killed off in this second movie.
Yeah.
I felt like the body count, and again, like you said, the body count's always higher. I was at one point, I was like, is anyone going to make it out of this movie? Like, but yeah, her death though really stands out for me. And I honestly didn't think she was going to get it. I thought it was going to be the Stranger Things girl, as we keep calling it.
Yeah. I think my favorite was actually the very first one when Tommy killed Andy, when they were all down there in the cave, just because it was like, you knew it was coming, and you knew that he was already too far gone. And when Andy turned his back, I was like, oh no, you never turn your back on the creepy person. What are you doing? So yeah, that was probably my favorite.
So the movie comes to an end in sort of two ways. It ends in the 70s when we see Ziggy sort of get resurrected by the guy we found out is Nick Good. And
I took issue with that, by the way. You don't get stabbed that many times and then be able to speak to someone coherently, like on a stretcher 20 minutes later. Like,
I'll get to that in a minute.
Thank you, Nick.
Verno knows it's coming.
I was looking at you.
I'll get to that in a minute.
Oh my God. Like when he came over there and he started doing CPR, I was like, you are shitting me. This girl got stabbed like 11 freaking times in the torso. There's no way. Like her lungs would, no. They're just no.
Mate, he He must have had time to run off and do another deal or something. So anyway, but yeah, I have that same complaint when you watch a lot of TV. They you think someone's getting it, and then like 20 minutes later, they're like sitting up in their stretcher. But anyway,
well, it's the same as the girl with the broken leg that's then walking around on it a few
Yeah.
minutes later.
With
It's
the
like,
bone popped out.
Right.
Like,
Oh,
come
yeah,
on,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
not
Compound
walking
fracture.
anywhere.
I'll limp. It was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
come on.
Yeah.
And especially in
And,
a cave, like I'd have left
right.
her. Be like, sorry, Alice. One of us should make it. So you, God bless you, but I'm leaving.
Yeah.
That's like, what's that horror movie? That comedy horror movie? Like rule number, whatever it is, be faster than the guy next to you. Or whatever.
Oh,
Zombieland.
Zombieland.
yeah, Zombieland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cardio, double tap.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Anyway, so it ends there, and then it jumps back to 1994, and we get to see Dina putting everything together, getting the hand, going to the bodies, sticking the hand on the bodies, and then sort of the titles come up as kind of a summary at the end. But I mean, like for me, I was like well hooked in at that point. I think that was probably a better ending than the whole Sam being a crazy sort of zombie murderer at the end of the first one. When that ends, I was like, fuck, I want to know what's going to happen now. Like, I'm well into this. Like, and were you guys at that point though, like really hooked? I mean, I know. Obviously, Jasmine watched all 3 in one day. She was massively hooked. And so, what about you guys? Like, Cookie, were you like at that point really like raging for number 3?
Oh yeah, I was all invested in this thing. I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah, let's do
I'm ready
this.
to go.
I'm not sure if there's sarcasm or not. If there's any industry where there's sarcasm. Anyway, Verno, what do you think? Like, were you like really hooked for the third one at that point?
I had my trepidation because like just the era of 1666, like I'm not as interested in movies of that time period.
Yeah, no,
and I knew that Dina was going to be the main character because I had seen
I
her in it.
didn't.
So I was like, oh,
I
God.
didn't either.
I didn't.
Yeah, I knew that was coming, so I was less excited about it.
Oh
for
boy,
sure.
I texted Mark when I started that third film, and I was like, I hate you for making me watch this shit.
I don't remember any of these messages. I've been so out of it the last few days. Anyway, Nick, like when you saw that ending, were you did you press play on the third one straight away?
So I think we talked about it and Jasmine mentioned it. If you crop off the 7 minutes before and the 7 minutes up front and the 7 minutes in the back, whenever they flash back to the 1994 crew, I got a little bit depressed every single time they did that. And then when Verno touched on it, when you saw the preview for the next one, and then you see those same characters, you're like, oh shit, here we go. I just wish they would have maybe used the real Sarah Fear, because we see her and we'll touch that in the next movie here. But you see that actress,
Right.
and she looks great. I mean, like she looks freaky and weird, and like she could play that character.
And
I
she
feel like
had a much better accent if that was
Yeah,
the
I
route that
know.
they were going to go.
and her
But God,
eyes and like everything about it was
Story.
just creepy. But no, I think it did make you want to press play, because then I realized how connected everything was going to be, and then I knew we were going to get a conclusion. So the first one confused the hell out of me. The second one really kicked it up a notch for sure, and then the third one I knew we were going to get a payoff and conclusion, and I was like, oh, all these really cool little Easter eggs. And the Easter egg payoff happens in the third film, so you don't really understand what you're going to get into until that one. But you do get some Easter eggs in the second one a little bit, and we're like, okay, this is going to be kind of cool. It's going to be fun to watch them weave this all together. So, but the death scene at the end when she got stabbed in the CPR, oh my God! So if you're not familiar with how puncture wounds work, you die from like loss of blood. So when somebody is doing CPR and pumping you, they're
Pushing the blood out.
They're making it
exacerbating the
worse.
issue. You're not reviving. And in the first movie, she gets hit with like 40 EpiPens.
You're even dead.
That doesn't work with drowned victims.
Right.
No.
That's what
It's
my
like-
fiance keeps saying. She's
Yeah.
a nurse too.
Right. I'm like, yeah, she has no pulse. She is actually dead. Epi would work, but you need CPR too. You gotta circulate that blood. Anyway, I can go on forever. Second one, way better. Maybe look forward to the third one because I was understanding how they're connecting them all.
Yeah.
I guess ratings time now. Like let's just start with Nick, because Nick just finished. What'd you rate it? Out of 5.
Yeah. So the first one, I think I said 2.5. So when you kind of compare that score, I'm going to say this was probably a 4.25. I'll say
Okay.
4.25.
Wow.
All right.
4.25, you digs.
I went backwards. Verno, what do you think?
I'll go. Yeah, it's weird. I'm regretting my original score for the last one because I'm comparing to that. I liked this one significantly more, but I'll give it a 4.69. No, I'll give it a 4.75. I liked it that much. I love it.
Wow.
Wow.
You've got to compare. I'm comparing it to what it is, like what they're trying to do, and I think they nailed what they were trying to do, and the characters were really good. Like putting it up next to The Shining, which is a 5.0.
No.
Like should it be that close? No.
Right.
But they nailed what they were trying to do, and I respected them for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they didn't let the story get in the way of the movie, like they did in the first one. But final answer.
Sure.
I think in the first one there was way too much world building, and that I think can really damage a film. And like when you're doing too much world building, like I mean, if you look at Tom Cruise's Mummy film, they should have just done a standalone movie with maybe a hint of world building.
Film never should have been made. Ever.
I know. And I think
Ever.
this film, had it been released in the cinema, part one released in the cinema, would everybody have gone to see part two? I don't think so. Like
No.
No, not at all.
Because part one was just literally full of world building. I think this movie, or the franchise itself, actually works better as actually a miniseries rather than a trilogy of movies. But,
Yeah, I can't imagine if they had released these further apart. Like if this had been 1 year, next year, and then a third year, they released a third film. Like these were not strong enough to carry the momentum that far. And apparently Netflix didn't even think that they were strong enough to carry the momentum from 1 month to another month. So that's why they did weekly, week to week to week. Yeah.
Cookie, what would you rate this movie?
I'm going to split it between the two. I'm going to do 4.5.
All right.
I definitely think it's just considerably better than the first one. So
I think I will go with a 4.
Okay.
And what about you?
I'm going to go with a 4 also. I thought that this one was just a much better film, and like Verno said, it's just, if I'm keeping it contained within these 3 films, but still rating them individually, like this one is far, far better than anything else that we've gotten so far. So that gives us an average, 4.3 for the second film.
Nice. So part 3.
Part 3, I'm sorry, not 19, 1666. Same people, all of the same writer, same director, and we are back to the original cast.
Well, and a combination of part 2.
Well, yeah, Tommy was there.
And Ziggy.
Yeah, they were there, but it was just in like cameo roles.
They were,
right?
yeah,
they were there.
They didn't do much.
No, Nurse Lane was there.
Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah.
They were background fodder.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, this one takes us all the way back to the origins of the town, when it originated as a union before it's broken into Sunnyvale and Shadyside. Still can't get over that Shadyside name. Anyway, in good old witch trial fashion, we have men in charge who condemned women for their advances and rebuffed. Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah. So here's where the plot starts to turn into something the audience hadn't thought at the beginning. According to the King of Horror movie rules, Randy Meeks' third and final rule to a horror trilogy: the past will come back to bite you in the ass. Whatever you think you know about the past, forget it. The past is not at rest. Any sins you think were committed in the past are about to break out and destroy you. And it's a great rule, to be honest. And I actually do love it about any trilogy, not just horror. When something comes out, Star Wars did it classically. But I actually have to say, I do love it when when all the origins come out in the third film. I think it is great to finally get some answers. So
when you finally get that new piece of information that turned out to not be very new at all, I think it's very, very few things do it well. And as shitty as this third film was, that reveal really got me, because I didn't see that coming at all.
I think we've all have to put our hands up. None of us were alive in 1666. I'm aware of on this podcast.
I don't think I was.
No. And I don't think any of us are historians. So unless you've got something to say, anyway, so how do you feel that this film works in terms of obviously trying to show us what the 1666 would have looked like. I mean, we just have to judge it on what they show us. I'm not Googling to find out how historically accurate any of this
but
stuff
I mean,
is.
you think about stuff like The Scarlet Letter, which is not exactly a horror movie, but like this very much had some Scarlet Letter like undertones to it.
I mean, there was a lot in here that I was aware of. Like, obviously, we know women and even just people of color in general were treated worse the further back in time you go.
All of these witch trials.
Yeah, I mean, so they did stick to a lot of that, and I felt like the dress and the town and everything looked how I think it would have looked back then. In terms of the accents, I don't know if that's how people sounded back then. I'm gonna go with it.
I'm gonna go no. No. As soon as that opening sequence hit and Dina opened her mouth, I was like, oh god,
oh boy,
oh god,
be a long movie.
This whole thank you. That's exactly what I said. I was like, oh no, what have I said?
And they all
I've
have
come
different.
too far.
Yeah, they're all different accents.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh god, it was terrible. It was a mess.
I think they go to the Amish community and they just listen to them. Like, let's just do that. You know what I mean? But let's just lay it out.
Like
really
somebody
quick.
on that set should have been like, "Yo, this is not working. Let's just be normal. Like we can still dress this way, but just speak normal."
I think that's why Henry wasn't in the movie as much. It's because he could not do the accent. He sounded kind of Jamaican.
Maybe he was like from Jamaica. We don't know where all these people came.
Oh my god!
Anyway, like, what do you guys think in terms of just the setting itself? Like, did you enjoy it? Well, so I know the film is split into two parts. So part one is in 1666, and part two is back in the 90s. We don't need to talk about that, but like part one, how well do you feel it sort of is suited? Like, did you feel it was as well as it could be? Like, Cookie, did you enjoy the experience of the 16th century?
I tried not to dive too deep in it. I really tried, but those accents, God, I mean, Netflix has this abundance amount of money. You mean to tell me that you can't hire a good voice acting coach to just give you guys all just, I don't know. That was the toughest part for me, was the voices. I just couldn't get over that part. And like you guys, I wanted the second movie cast to be more prevalent than the first. But unfortunately, we only got the first set of cast. So you play the cards you're dealt, and I guess they played till they folded, I guess.
Yeah. What about you, Verno?
I mean, as far as like it feeling like 1666, so, you know, we're all in the same boat where we're just judging it based on other movies that we've seen that are set in the past, and it felt like those other movies to a degree. I think, you know, it was good enough. It's the easiest one to do. They can't rely on the music to put you in that era, which is, I'm sure they're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? But it's like, you know, it looks just like all the other movies you've ever seen set back in the day. So it was, you know, it worked for me. Besides the accents.
Nick, what about you?
I agree with what's been said. So I think that they set wise, we can just use our imaginations and what we've seen before. And I mean, they've done a couple aerial shots, and it's a pretty small little thing. It's like, what is it? A well and like 6 buildings and like a church. That's it. And they've done those kind of pan out shots. Then there's like large field, tree, woods, creepy cabin where dude lives, and like other hut where the witch lives, right? Where Mary lives. And so the set was pretty simple. It was pretty, I mean, everything was just like so stereotypical. Everything about this was just extremely stereotypical. And that's probably because we don't have any firsthand experience, and we're just kind of relying on our knowledge of, you know, from other movies and stuff. But I don't know. I think it was okay. I'm glad it was only half the movie.
Yes,
I'm glad they went back. I don't think I could sit through an hour and 45 minutes. Of
Not
that
those
time
accents.
period.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, I don't know.
I didn't know what to expect in terms of, I was actually kind of shocked when halfway through it went right, part 2. I was like, oh, like 90s, like we're back. I gathered we were going back to the 90s. I just didn't expect for the film to be cut as much as it was, like 1 hour in the past and 1 hour in the present. I'm actually glad that we got to spend more time in the present, because it was good to get everything wrapped up. I thought that was good. Probably my biggest complaint, I know we've joked about the accents, but my biggest complaint of the 16th century was actually they should have been brave enough to have given us a brand new cast. So my only question was, like, you know, like you just said, actually the actress Serafina, who we got to see a couple of times in flashbacks, I would much rather we'd have got a brand new cast of people. And maybe the only reason they were doing that is because they wanted to have the whole twist of Nick and Solomon. Like maybe that's why they wanted it, so you just didn't see it coming. But they could have still given him just called him Solomon Good, and like, you know, and it could have been a different actor. I mean, I guess they were probably wondering, well, if they used the same actor, would that stand out as a bit of a red, you know, as a bit of a red flag? But they could have done it. I mean, you know, we had a different actor I know in the 70s playing Nick Good as a teenager. So why couldn't we have had a different actor playing Solomon? And it was all very Back to the Future, like basically everybody just playing different roles. Yes. I really do hate it in anything where you just have the same actors recycled, like especially like in franchises playing different roles. And I know, like, you know, Dynasty and all that kind of shit, they replace actors, like, or sorry, characters with the same actors and stuff like that all the time. But we expect that of cheesy sort of drama shows. I kind of don't like it when it's meant to be something. This isn't meant to be a comedy. Like, I mean, there's some comical moments, but Fear Street was never set up as a comedy. I don't know if they would sit.
Or was it?
Well, I don't know. They weren't going. They definitely weren't a serious horror franchise. But it wasn't Scary Movie. So that was my biggest complaint, was the first part. I wish it had been a brand new cast, and I would have been happy if they'd have sort of like, so you could have got the whole thing of Serafina and Dina seeing each other. I would have been happy if they'd have showed like maybe some sort of thing where they kind of replace each other sort of briefly, a bit like Quantum Leap, like, and then showed the actress of Serafina. But that's probably my only complaint. I was happy in terms of the dress and the town, like you just said, Nick, about the sort of the aerial shots about the small town. It did make me think, like when we see Serafina getting accused of being a witch and she does a runner, I started to think, man, she just runs a couple miles and she'll be gone. She would have survived the day. Like, and it just made me wonder, like, well, I would have just kept on running. I mean, I don't know how far away the nearest town was.
Right, that's what I say. It's like there's not a Walmart she's gonna go use a phone on the other side of the course.
Yeah.
I did think to myself, like, she'd have kept on running. Like, even if it had taken 2 or 3 days to get to the nearest settlement, she could have started again. Like, I don't know. That's kind of what I started thinking. But
I was going to throw in, I bet they saved money. I bet they put these kids under contract for multiple movies, and they saved a bunch of money by having the same actors in the movies.
They filmed everything just like Lord of the Rings style, back to back to back. It was 106 days to film all 3 movies.
Oh, wow.
I was done well on the cheap then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, to chime off of what you said, I definitely think it's like a missed opportunity with the main character. Like, we could have had the opportunity of, when she looked into the well and she saw her reflection, she's like, okay, this is a totally different body. If they just used that and said, okay, she's visiting this time period, but it's not her, she's just watching it kind of unfold. They could have easily done that and had a brand new character or brand new actor come into the play.
Exactly.
I think they thought we were going to like her. You know what I mean?
I don't know who thought that we would like that accent. I really don't. I mean, she was the worst offender of all of the bad accents. The only person that had a decent accent was Tommy.
Oh, yeah. I agree. He was good.
Mm-hmm.
Henry was good with a Jamaican accent.
Yeah. Right by the beach.
Can't even.
I'm not even going to try. Not very good with accents most of the time. But anyway, so it's the final
English one. What are you talking about? You sound English as hell.
I know. I'm from New York originally. So.
It's super authentic, right?
Yeah. And you know, whenever I go to America, I'm like a puppet. I was like, oh, say bloody hell. I'm like, literally, I'm chatting to people and they're like, oh, can you say something? I'm like, what? Like, and literally, it is always bloody hell. I'm like, okay, I'll say it.
We can't help it. We're American, okay? Like, this is all we know about England is the Queen and bloody hell. That's it. All right.
We don't have accents here. That's why they're so interesting. Americans we have American accents, but we don't have other people around. You know, we don't have other accent, other countries that are that close. You know what I mean? I don't meet many English people or anybody with an accent.
I love the Boston accent. I love the Boston accent. Like, everything's like fuck off. Like, I can't do a Boston accent, but they're like, that's how they speak to each other. It's like fuck off. And anyway, okay, so the third film, like, obviously plot, writing, how do you think it does in terms of just wrapping everything up? So, like, the attention to detail in bringing this movie to a close. There's only one thing particularly that really annoyed me in terms of wrapping everything up. I think we probably will all think about the same thing, but I'll just sort of go around the virtual room. Cookie, what do you think of the structure and writing and plot of this movie?
I think definitely timing of making everything so long. If they made 1666 a little bit shorter, and then they kind of made it more fluid of a transition getting back into a present time, I think that would have been more beneficial for the audience to enjoy. But other than that, I think the writing was good. How it definitely concluded everything and brought everything to the light, if you will. I enjoyed it for that value of including everything and making it all whole.
Verno, what do you think?
I didn't like the movie on either time I watched it. This is the only one that when I watched it again, I was like, damn, this still sucks. But I thought, they answered all the questions. I didn't really love what they answered though. Like, we find out what's Sarah Fear all about. It's like, I didn't love, like, I don't know what the message was. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the message? And then I didn't love when we find out what Shady Side versus Sunnyvale is there, like the metaphor behind that. I didn't love, but it did a decent job of tying the two together. It was just too strung out or too long. They shouldn't have been nearly as long in 1994. That drug on forever. The first part, I didn't mind. The length of that was kind of perfect for me. It wasn't too long, and you couldn't do it too much shorter than that because then it wouldn't be the 1666 movie.
Yeah,
it was.
They definitely could have tightened up that mall scene though.
For sure. And that whole thing was kind of ridiculous to me. I love Super Soakers as much as the next guy, but it was like
it was 1994, Verno. Come on.
But you're aiming from 100 yards away thinking that you're going to spray somebody?
Right.
Listen, it worked in 94. Okay. Mechanics have changed since then, guys. All right. We're in 2021 now. Okay. So just in 94, this all worked. Don't worry. All right, Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, so there's a few different problems. I'm still trying to reconcile. Maybe I'm just missing the point, but like I feel like the relationship between, what was it, Sam and Dina, right? The two main characters. So the relationship there, they kind of touched back on it again in this one. And so I don't know if that was to kind of remind viewers that, like, hey, this is a thing still, because in the second movie we lost that whole narrative, right? Until the end caps, right? The beginning and end. So I was like, okay, so they touched back on that. But that wasn't necessarily the reason why this whole thing happened. They were just kind of out partying, right? And they were going to kind of like, hey, there's like a witch's house over here. And then she accidentally reads the book, which kind of like curses the town. But
nope,
it wasn't that. But it was Nick's heritage, right? Kind of cursing the town too. So it's like I was kind of confused about what was going on, but we kind of learned a little bit more about it. So they had some like red herrings there, is what I'm trying to say. I think towards the end, the mall scene and stuff, that was just way too elaborate for what was going on. I didn't enjoy that. So I don't know. This was almost on par with the first movie. I think it was like just as bad as the first movie, but we had some cool answers to the questions we've had this entire time. So you have to give it credit for that. But I think it really kind of shows how strong the second movie was when you watch those other two.
Yes, exactly.
But I had so many questions about all these things, and I just it didn't play out to me.
Okay. The acting, I thought that the acting in the first film was pretty awful, and then I was completely shocked at how much more awful the acting was in this third film. But like plot wise, I really liked how everything kind of turned, and it turns out that it wasn't Sarah Fear that had started all of this stuff, although technically it kind of was, because as she was dying, she cursed the town just, while she was.
Is she a witch?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
So like, but I thought that the origin of the curse itself was interesting, but getting to that point was such a slog. I mean, it just like the first half of the movie just dragged on. And then when they were going to introduce the pastor, because he was the first victim of Sarah Fear, so to speak. And he literally was just like one scene, one thing where he just went crazy and then they killed him right away. And I was like, all this buildup for this guy who was the first, and this is all we get. Like,
Yeah.
you gouged out your own eyeballs, and then you gouged out the eyeballs of every kid in town. Like, this is really gruesome, and I don't really understand the point of, like, I don't understand what you gain from it. So to me, it just sort of, the 1666 part put in more questions than it answered. And then when we go back to 94, it was just kind of like the mall scene was too long. And then like the cliches at the end where it's like, oh, then the mayor gets hit by a truck. And I'm like, really? Like, we've come so far, and then you just end it so cheaply with like, oh, look, now bad things are happening in Sunnyvale. Wow, look, the mayor got hit by a truck. And I'm like, oh, okay.
And they're happy about it.
Yeah, like, I don't.
It's like, what's that message? It's like, oh, we want things to be better for us, but we also want them to be worse for the people on the other side.
Yeah,
it's not. You know,
that's a good point. It's like,
can't
wait,
we
the
all
curse
just
is
be happy?
The curse is lifted. That means that like everybody's on a level playing field as far as tragedy goes. Like, why is the other side being cursed now? Like, was that the message that
I don't know. Maybe it's that somebody has to pay. So if it's not Shady Side paying, then Sunnyvale has to pay.
Huh.
Maybe that's it.
I assumed with that scene, because I actually quite like that scene, and I only like because of the music, and but I love the fact that they come out of some really nice house, it's covered in blood. Oasis Live Forever kicks in, and then the mayor's car gets slammed by a was it a
garbage truck
or whatever. And but I just make the assumption that like it wasn't necessarily that their town's now cursed. It's just that could have happened anyway.
Well, I think specifically it was because the mayor is a good. So I think now the good family is cursed. Is kind of how it works. Right. Like, you had your chance and you fucked it up, and so now we're coming after you.
And it sucks because I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he just was mayor, and
because I don't think the whole family was in on it. I think it was kind of like like you choose who carries on the thing. So
Henry didn't buy it. Henry's like, sure, didn't know anything about it.
If
Henry's Jamaican ass doesn't buy it, then I don't buy it either.
For me, I think it did fairly well. Like, I'm glad that it got split into two. Like, I'm glad that a good chunk of it was in the 16th century. And I, accents aside, fairly enjoyed it. It was very stereotypical though. Like, and it did annoy me, the whole. And I assume this is what must have happened anyway. But like, a man getting rejected. Okay, so they're witches. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a historian, but I assume things like that happened, like men getting rejected and taking it very badly. And when that happened, I was like, oh,
it still happens.
I know, but they don't hang people now for it. Like, and,
no, they just kill them.
Well,
men kill more women in this world than anything else, than any other drowning, airplane accidents, fire. No, men kill women. Period.
No, I know, but I mean, like, but when he was like stood up in front of him saying there's like witchcraft, and I was like, I can see where this is going. That part, wasn't great, but I guess it just happened back then, and there's probably a lot of women that were probably accused of witchcraft because of silly things that like, and we all know about how they had to prove that they weren't witches. If they floated, they were witches. Let's be honest, how many of them got to float? Like, so, but in terms of wrapping it up, I actually thought it was quite clever, some of the stuff, like the whole twist of Solomon Good. I'll be honest with you, I saw it coming about 30 seconds before. Like, once he said, does anyone else know about this? I was like, oh, here we go. The moment they ask, does anyone else know? Like, if I ever find something out and I'm telling someone and they go, does anyone else know? I'm like, get the fuck out of here.
And I think Verno's the other one who's going to get this, but DC versus vampires. Did you think about that? Did you you read the book?
I read like 20 books yesterday. I barely remember that one, bro.
Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
If I'm ever sitting down and I'm like saying, oh, I think I know there's a murderer, and they're like, yeah, have you told anyone else about this? I'm like, yes, I've told loads
everyone. I have told everyone.
Literally just before I came here, I made a video and I sent it to everybody I know, and I actually in the video said I was coming to your house. Oh, okay. Like 100% would like never ever be in that position. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it was like, in terms of origin movie and the structure and everything, I think they did all right with it. Like, in terms of the only one thing that I particularly hated about this movie was when Dina ran past that flipping witch's book, and I was like, what are you doing? When she left it there. And at the end, when someone snatches it, like I was like, no. Like I was like, when is part 4 coming out? Because clearly like that. But yeah, I mean, they actually have said that they would like to use this as a MCU type horror movie thing and build from this. So once that book got snatched, I was like, it was so simple, Dina. You ran past it. It would have taken you 10 seconds to have picked that book up and burnt it. Like, you know, paper burns. It's not the Jumanji board.
I mean, it could have been like Jumanji, but we're never going to know now, are we?
So that was the only thing that annoyed me.
Well, it was weird because it was an evidence. I mean, like there was tape everywhere. There was like, you know, when they have like bullet casings, they put those little numbers and stuff like that.
Yep.
But like, why would they leave the book? Is that supposed to be like a supernatural reappearance of the book? Like maybe it wasn't there and it just.
Well, if they hadn't left it there, they couldn't have made a part 4. So
well, so it's a plot device.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say was, didn't they kind of preach in the second one that when you join the hand with the body, the curse is lifted? Like, wasn't that the assumption? Like, hey, we have, and that was the whole point of the second movie when it transitions to the third. It's like, hey, we know where the body is. Where's the hand? And she's like, you know what I mean? Like, we got to get these two together, and that the curse is gone.
Well, but they assumed that would end the curse, and what it did was it showed you the truth.
Right.
It showed you
because that wasn't the curse. It wasn't the witch's curse. It was the
it was the good curse.
The good and the devil curse. Yeah,
I just thought it was weird in the book. They could have said, "Hey, when you join the hand, you're gonna vision the past, and then all of a sudden you'll know what to do." It's like we kind of thought it was just the joining of those two of the body parts would do it. But then, of course, we learned that that's just a way of seeing the actual truth. So
I think the assumption I made is that, like, obviously over the years things change and history changes and things like that, and how much of it. Or did the good family subtly alter history, you know, to suit their own agenda and narrative? So this whole putting everything on Serafina over the years kind of deflected from the good family. So
I'm laughing every time you call her Serafina, because who the fuck is Serafina? Seraphir.
Sorry.
Serafina.
Sorry, Seraphir.
Have you seen those Fina Street movies? They're great.
Seraphir. I don't know why I keep saying it. Sorry. I'm ill. Just blame it on my. Seraphir. There you go. Anyway. I mean, did you guys have a favorite killer in this movie?
Or did it change? Like by the time you got to the very end of the trilogy, did your favorite killer change?
Or at this point, do you even care?
I don't care.
Yeah, same.
I mean, who even got killed in this one? It was just the priest killed all those kids, right?
Yeah,
I mean, were there other murders?
That's pretty
Sarah
horrible.
Got hung.
The two cops in the mall, but we don't even know who they were.
Yeah, right. I didn't care about them.
Yeah.
I mean, that was obvious they were going to get killed off.
The sheriff, I think, was probably the best killing.
Yeah, he was probably the best killer in the film.
I don't know. He was still too intact body wise. I mean, if they brought Ziggy back after she'd been stabbed 50 bajillion times, like he only got shot once. Like he easily
you've never been to prison.
Could have been revived. I mean, like I don't know. To me, like. Unless you get decapitated, then there's always a chance for you to come back. So I was very unsatisfied with the way that Nick Good died.
I think the montage. I think when they super soaked all the killers and they were all just hacking each other apart. That was the best part. I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be like Freddy versus Jason all over again. Like this is gonna be insane. And then they just kind of mold back together.
For that to be in the same movie. That was the hard thing. Like the two parts of the movie did not blend together at all.
No.
The tone of the first hour was completely different than the second. Like that WWF match that we got in the mall.
The Royal Rumble
mesh well with the rest of it.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to say another thing about Mark. You had mentioned that you liked that bit that where at the end of the second one, and this ties in with the end of the third one, where they tricked you into which sister was going to die or which sister was telling the story. Here's my thing. Like, I don't think it was worth it to have, if the girl that played, and I'm just going to call her again, the Stranger Things girl, if in the third movie, in the third act, if she was a redheaded girl with bright blue eyes and freckles, we would be like, oh, that's that girl. Even though we know it's that girl, I never believed that was that girl. You know what I mean? I don't know if it was worth it, or maybe it was. I wonder what you guys think. Was it worth it for that, where they subverted our expectations of who it was, and then we didn't get that connection in the third movie as well as we could have? with that character and her prior relationship with Good and all that. She just seemed like some random chick that was there at the end of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like it was a bit of a miscasting there. I think that probably the two teenage sisters in the second film should have both been like, I don't know, both brunettes or something like that. So then that way in the future, when we've got Ziggy in the future who's a brunette, like you can kind of get like
Right.
that you're like, shoot, like
Right.
you could have still had them be different characters, you know, like in terms of the two sisters. One is the smart, serious student type, and the other one is rebellious, I don't know, sort of spicy thug type one. You know, like you know, she wasn't a thug, but you know, she was rebellious, like, and the gangster one, like, and so, like, that's obviously a joke, but anyway, so and but yeah, I think you could have still had them be very their own character, and then have it like in the future be like, and that kind of thing. I wanted to say, you know, we made a joke about Jumanji earlier, like in the second when we go and get meet Ziggy's sister, that so reminded me of the Jumanji film where they couldn't carry on playing the board game and then had to go and find the girl who's an adult now and get her to join in the film, so get the board game, and like because she kind of knows like not all the answers, but she was kind of obviously traumatized by what happened in the sort of 60s 70s, and they kind of bring her in. That whole thing in Fear Street when they went and found older Ziggy and she had to help, like I thought that was very Jumanji. So I know we've kind of gone off on a tangent here, but
favorite survivor.
Yeah,
the whole series favorite. Who?
Henry.
Henry.
Yeah. All day. Henry.
Yes.
Henry wins every category.
I love it. I love it.
Best accent, Henry. Most entertaining, Henry. Best survivor, Henry.
I think I love
smartest,
it when
Henry.
Smartest, Henry.
I love it though, that scene at the end where Dina and Henry come out, like Dina puts some horrible food in a plate and he's like, my doctor said I can't eat whatever that is. Like, honestly, yeah, I think he's gonna have a much bigger, better career, like a big career. I could see big things for him. He does. He's a
Nickelodeon kid. He came through the machine already, so he's got a lot more experience.
Yeah, I did love his ending too, with him on the cat, like getting his cat signed and then
meeting the AOL girl.
Yeah, the AOL girl. Yeah, I love that. That was sort of showing a little bit of a future romance for him that he didn't completely end up on his own.
Yeah. So. Come on, who had AOL or AIM? I had AIM. I totally had AIM. I lived on AIM. Absolutely. Back when I was in like middle school.
Chat rooms. Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah. Netscape we had.
Netscape.
It was around.
No, we used to actually, like, if you're walking down the street, okay, my apologies, but we like when people, like most people still got the paper, you get those little AOL discs in the newspaper.
Oh yeah,
man, on the way to school in the mornings, we would just walk by people's paper. We wouldn't take the paper, but we sure as shit took those AOL discs, man.
100 free hours.
Yeah.
Yep, every disc.
I do love that. I did love that line in the first one. Do you know how much AOL costs? And he's like, "No, man, I'm nicking it from the neighbor." That reminded me of that. Again, that reminded me of like Pump Up the Volume, where he's like nicking the neighbor's phone line. So, anyway, I'm going to get it right now. But what did you guys think about the ending for Sarah Fear, the Good Family, and even Dina and family as well? By the way, I do love, before we say any more, the fact that we never meet Dina and Henry's parents. Like,
yes, thank you. Yes,
it just implied that the dad's a drunk.
Well, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah,
he's not around. So.
I don't think there is a mom, because they only ever mention a dad.
Yeah.
Did mom die or mom left? I think they said mom left or something like that.
Maybe it's shady side. I mean, she probably died.
One of the two.
Maybe she went over the road to the Sunnyvale.
No, you can't. You can never leave. It's like Hotel California.
She's got ripped polos and stained polos and stuff over there.
Yeah.
You can't run that curse.
Okay, all right. Let's start with you, Verno. What do you think of the end?
I didn't care for it. I mean, it tie things up in a decent little bow. They left Henry alive. They left Dina alive. Dina and Sam get to hook up now. So I mean, yes, that's all satisfactory. But by the time it got to that point, I no longer cared. I was way over it, you know?
Yeah. The third movie did that to you, man.
Right.
Nick, what about you?
Yeah. So when we get the revelation that it was the good family kind of all along, I think that it should have ended way sooner. But then you had to gotta go back to the 1994 cast, and you had to tie up that loose end as well. So like, I don't know how else you really do it, but I don't know. The ending was just too long. I liked all the little Easter eggs. There's tons of payoff moments in this thing. Everything from when they're burying the body and they put the little crown of leaves or whatever it is, like you see that in the first one. There's so many like loose ends that are tied, little Easter eggs that are tied up like that, which was the most enjoyable thing I think about the third movie. So I don't know. Overall, we should have probably saw it coming. I mean, Nick Good. You got to follow the horror trends and just assume it's like the most obvious person is probably the killer. So I think there's a lot of, in retrospect, there's a lot of obvious things we missed. I don't know. I think they did the best they could as a trilogy. I think it works, but you know, I don't know. I didn't like the way they did it at the end though.
Okay.
Cookie, what about you?
I agree with these gents. I think it ended as best as they could end it. I'm just really happy that Henry got to get a win. He got a win in there. He became a man. I was happy for him.
So for future reference, this is the Henry fan club here. Okay, we are the 5 founding members of the Henry fan club
for sure.
You know what's funny is like he's not even that good. He's not that entertaining. Just when you put him next to all these other characters, like Henry, give me more Henry.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Well, it's either Henry or the weird kid that jacks off in the bathroom. Come on, like how is that even like a decision to make?
He's just so over the top.
Yeah,
I think I prefer Sam, who has like nothing about her.
She's a zombie half the time.
Over the weird kid who jacks off in the bathroom. Like
she just looks tired all the time.
Yeah,
That's where she always looks exhausted.
Yeah, is that what it is? I'm sorry. Okay, so it's exhaustion. She's not a zombie. Oh man, I think the third one, did the best that it could. It was still terrible, but I enjoyed the twist. I really did. I enjoyed the twist. I just wish it hadn't been so awful to get there. Like, if could we have gotten there without as much misery on my end as the viewer? Like, that would have been better. But I feel like because of all of the other garbage that we had to go through, the impact isn't the same. Like, it's in better hands with a better budget, better cast, like that would have been a home run. I think that would have been such a phenomenal film if it had the opportunity to have been done right. But the entirety of the 1666 bit was just like, I cannot believe that this past editing, this past producers, this past like everybody signed off on this, and then Netflix was like, okay guys, here you go. Like, shame on all of you.
Right.
Let this go as is. Shame on you.
So before we go into ratings, throughout all 3 movies, there's a lot of different music. There was several tracks in each movie that jumped out at me. Was any tracks for you guys that like you loved, or like even the helped with the scene itself? I've got there's 2 actually in part 1 and part 2 that I particularly loved. But before I jump into that, like, anyone got any thoughts on the music, or you just didn't care? Like, Verno, what about yourself? Like, any thoughts on the music?
Oh, there was bangers left and right in the 90, in the 78 stuff and the 94 stuff. But if I had to go, I'll do 2. The one, I just loved how they used, don't you know I'm loco? And she used that, like that gunshot there.
Yeah.
That was dope. And then every time I was sitting there fucking hating this 1666 movie. I'm like, this is terrible. It's the worst thing I ever seen. They're like, Mo murder. And I'm like, fuck yeah, come again. Like, that was the shit. And that's kind of a deep cut. Like, people don't necessarily know Mo murder. I mean, maybe we all do, but I was hell yeah, bone. I love that. So that was the shit.
What, Nick? Any favorite tracks and scenes? Like, I mean, those scenes helped by the music for yourself?
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those it's one of those instances where I can't pinpoint the exact songs that they use, but every single song they use, I was like, of course they would pick this song, right? Yeah. Like, it made every song was just a complete banger, and it was everybody knows them. But then when I'm trying to think back, I'm like, I can't name 2 that they actually used, and that really worked. It almost feels like when I was watching it, I was thrilled that they used those songs because I listen to those songs all the time, and then but at the same time, I hated it because I feel like they're just kind of playing to the audience a little bit. And they're like, yeah, we know what the 90s was like. Here's some really popular 90s songs, or we know what the 70s were like. You know what I mean? So like, it kind of was a double-edged sword for me, the way that they used the music in that one. Now, I touched on this earlier. I can't remember her name. Was it Ruby? Her appearance and the way that they used her song and everything was perfect. I love that. But yeah, the music was obviously great, but I don't remember it, and I thought it was pretty cliche that they picked some of the songs, but not to say that that's not on my playlist daily.
But how else would you know that it took place in 1994 if they didn't play
we
those
had
songs?
to hear Nirvana. We had to hear that, right? Like, okay, of course we did.
Yeah.
You know. So,
what about you, Cookie?
I got a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy vibes. And they pulled a lot of songs from there as well. So I'm with Nick. I really couldn't pinpoint one exact song, but the second that I did hear some of the songs, I was like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy, like, oh, Stranger Things. And it worked. It definitely worked. It fit the mold of what they were trying to go for. So I enjoyed it. Yeah.
There's two scenes for me, like where I really love the music. I already told you guys about earlier, at the end of the part 3, when Dina and Sam are walking out of Nick's house, and they're literally covered in blood, and then suddenly Live Forever kicks in. I was like, fucking yes, like, I love Oasis. And but like in the first film, when Dina gets on the bus and Cypress Hill music's kicking off, and then when she sits down, I actually think this is quite cool when they do this. And like, this is not original what they did here, but when she puts her headphones on, the music instantly changes, and then it changes to what was it? Creep, and I was like, oh yeah, Radiohead, yeah, and I was like, oh, I love that track as well, and it is so 90s, but like I love the way they switched it up, and I think it really works for that scene because it's like those buses. I know you talked about they've never fit that many people, but I loved how student buses are always chaotic, and and she was getting abuse as she's walking down the sort of the aisle, and it's everyone's all like party city, because everyone's like, students don't really care that they're going to like a funeral thing. They're just all like, we're on a bus and we're going to go crazy. But then I love that she's gone into sort of misery mode, and Creep is like the perfect track to go that misery mode.
She's a loner, okay? Like how else are you going to know again that she's a loner unless the music tells you that?
Unless Tom York comes on there and it's like, that she's like that.
Exactly. The only song I remember is Carry On Wayward Son, of course. Supernatural, very fitting to put that song in the 78 film. So I didn't pay attention to the music. I mean, I recognized most of the tracks from the 90s, but it didn't. I think I was at especially in the first film, it was just like, oh, okay, how much longer do we have in this film? So even the music couldn't pull me into it to make me want to keep watching.
Okay, so I'm gonna rate the movie and the trilogy. So just go around the virtual room, rate your movie and rate your overall, all three together. So Cookie, how would you rate this movie and trilogy?
3.2 for the movie, and then for the trilogy, I would give it about a 4.6.
What?
Wow.
That's high.
Yeah, I think it's high because when you look at everything combined as one, and not because I binge watched it all. So when I did that, it was long. It was super long, but I've sat through Lord of the Rings multiple times. So I'm like, there's no candle to that.
Yeah, but they're fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the books too. That's side piece. But yeah, when you look at it as a whole, it all works together. The writing is fantastic. Yeah, it could have been a hell of a lot better. Could I have done a better job? Absolutely not. I am not anywhere near a writer or director, but it worked and I enjoyed it. And as a person who doesn't like horror films at all, I enjoyed this. So if you can get somebody to enjoy it, why not?
Nick, what about yourself?
I think for this movie as a standalone, what did I say? I think I said 2.5, and I think I said 4.25. I'm going to say probably a 3 for this one as a standalone. But I think altogether, maybe like a 3.5 because of all the connections and everything that Cookie just said. Like you don't get the full picture unless you watch all the movies. So as a trilogy, it's really fun to see all the pieces fall into place. With that said, the first movie's a mess. The second movie had this weird split with the two different scenes, and a lot of it didn't work in both. eras that they had, but you needed all that context to understand the full story. So as a trilogy, I thought it was pretty cool and clever, but it still wasn't outstanding, I don't think. So I don't know. I'll say probably a 3 for the whole, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Verno?
I'll go for this one for the third film. I'll give it like a 2. Like I think it's not good. For the experience as a whole, I'll go like a 4.25 again, because I thought it was like, that's the word, is clever. It was pretty clever. Like, it was well written. I don't think it was super well executed, but it was pretty impressive actually to put all those stories together and have it make that much sense. And it was pretty damn entertaining, and it had some banger songs, as we mentioned. And yeah, I thought it was fun. A lot of that is coming from the second movie, because after watching it again, I loved it, and I liked the first one too. So I'll final answer for what I say, 4.25 overall.
Yeah.
Solid.
Okay. Mark, what you got for the first one? I mean, for the third one.
I think I'd rate the movie itself. I'd probably go down a bit on the movie, but 3.5 for the movie. But as a trilogy, I'm leaning some. Do you know what? I'm going to go with 4.25 as a trilogy. I think like Verno said here, it is actually written really well. I think when you rewatch the first one, you can see the cleverness of this trilogy. Like, there's just so many things that they've lined up. They've definitely, like, I can imagine that they wrote the first one, wrote the second and third, and then went back and kind of started to structure them together, because I can't imagine that they wrote every single thing in the first one for the third one, but I imagine that when they were viewing them as a whole, they probably tweaked several things, like, and even probably during the actual filming and editing process, I think it's, I would say, generally been executed well. I know there's some issues here and there, but I think it's actually a very well planned out trilogy, and I think there's a lot to be said for something that's well planned, and it's definitely well planned. So yeah,
I'm not being generous at all. This third film gets a 1.5 for me, and that extra half point is being extremely generous, I think. The third movie is a wreck. Like, the first movie is a mess, and the third movie is a wreck. Overall, I give the whole trilogy 3.5. I did like the twist. I did like the thread that carried through all three. But as an overall product, it's still very kind of middle of the road to me. So that gives us an average of 2.64 for the third film, which is our worst rated, and an average of 3.92 for the whole trilogy. So
do you guys know that the Rotten Tomato scores get better for each one? Isn't that funny?
What?
Yeah,
I honestly don't know how anyone watched the third film and enjoyed it. Like,
it depends on what you're looking for. I think it's because of the message that they gave. It's it's not good enough to overlook everything else. You ever look at Rotten Tomato scores?
No, never.
It does. It's a big factor.
I don't. Do you know what? I've had this argument with my brother loads of times. I don't judge something I want to watch based off of someone else's rating. If I want to watch it, I'll watch it. I'll look at ratings sometimes, like afterwards, out of curiosity for other people's thoughts. But I'm like, no, if I want to watch that, I don't care about opinions.
Right.
But this is where I like other people's podcasts, because I'm like, actually, no. The only time I will watch something or listen to something beforehand, Verno, you're one of the people. Like, I can't afford every comic book out there. So things like when people read 20 or 30 comics, I'm like, yeah, okay, I will listen to that, and that will help me pick my select few that I might pick up. And Verno, actually, your weekly one, I've been listening to iFanboy for like 20 years, and but I've been listening to their show, but actually it's been quite nice to spice up yours as well. Like, and I like the fact that you round it down to 20 minutes, which actually for your Wednesday one, where you sort of give a spoiler-free review, actually does quite help me when it comes to me spending money.
Thanks, appreciate that.
That's fine, man. Like, yeah, thanks for spending that money. So
thanks for spending money so I don't have to. Thank you.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
There you go.
I know you do the same, Nick, but obviously his podcast episode comes out on a Wednesday pretty much, and so thanks for reading it always on a Wednesday as well. And then obviously I catch Nick at night as well, and
you gotta
And anyway, so next episode 75, we'll be joined from Matt from Talking Pop Culture in Australia, and be the second time ever on the podcast that we'll have 3 countries on one episode. We'll be reviewing Zack Snyder's Army of Thieves, and so just want to say thanks to everyone, every like all of our guests, obviously the 3 of you, Cookie, Nick, Verno, and obviously guests we've had this month as well, celebrating Halloween with us. So guys, just before we finish up, just start with Cookie. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, on Instagram at Just Little Podcast, on Twitter at Just Podcasting, and on YouTube at Just Little Podcast.
Nick?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well, Nick Comic Culture, and I'm on YouTube under the same name.
Verno?
YouTube, just search the Cerebros, and you might have to throw in comics to make sure that it pops up right away. We're working on that. But on Instagram at Cerebros and don't use Twitter, people. It's a terrible place to be. But I'm on there, but just stay off it. You don't want that as part of your life. Come on, man. Get off there. It's a nasty place to be. But
Listen, man, Twitter is my favorite place to be. Anyway, don't forget, we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our 11th Late to the Party Book Club episode was Batman: The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. That episode dropped mid-October, just in time for spooky season. So our next book club, we are going to be taking a look at the first 2 volumes of Fables.
You can also follow us everywhere on social media. We are on Twitter as well, and Instagram and Facebook as Geeks Unleashed.
And you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Google, Podbean, Apple, Spotify. We are everywhere. So please give us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Also give Cookie, Nick, and Verno 5-star reviews everywhere as well. Anyway, thanks for listening, and guys, thanks for joining us. So everybody have a good week, and hopefully I'll feel better for the next podcast.
Good journey.
Thanks,
yeah,
y'all.
good journey, everyone.
Appreciate you.
Oh, yeah.